In this ninja world, I'm the one in charge now. Uzumaki Naraku. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276 Complete Susanoo. Outside the temple, Naraku looked at the third generation who looked so young before him. He was shocked. Although he knew that the first generation cells were also transplanted into the third generation's body, he did not expect that the first generation cells could bring such a big change to the third generation, allowing his already aging body to regain its prime. At this time, Naraku felt something abnormal. There were many people who had transplanted the first generation cells, such as Yamato, Danzo, Obito, and now the Six Tails Jinchuriki and Sarutobi Ikun. They all have more or less first generation cells in their bodies, but currently, only Obito has achieved a pretty good result. Not only can he use the powerful wood release ninjutsu, but his own cells have also been qualitatively enhanced. As for Danzo and others, in Naraku's eyes, they are not much better than Green Master Yamato. But it was different now. At this time, Naraku had already opened Kaguya's inner eye. He carefully sensed the third generation's body. He could no longer sense the simple first generation cells, and replaced them with a new, extremely powerful cell. What makes Naraku feel strange is that the cells in Sanday's body divide very quickly, even several times that of ordinary people. It seems to be somewhat similar to Sister Tsunede's Hyakuheo no Jutsu, Naraku murmured. Shadow clone technique. While Naraku was still dazed, the third generation quickly formed seals, and then two shadow clones appeared on the field. Then his hand movements did not stop, and he was still forming seals quickly. Fire escape, dragon fire bullet, earth, escape, earth dragon bullet. The main body and the shadow clone released ninjutsu at the same time, and the crimson flames turned into flames, and combined with the mud bullets sprayed by the earth dragon combination ninjutsu, fire flow earth fire bullet. In an instant, several fire flowing earth flame bombs tore through the air, and bombarded in the direction of Naraku. Its range was so wide that it covered nearly 10 meters around Naraku. Inoki, who was floating in the air, saw this scene and his pupils shrank slightly. Inoki and Sanday were considered the same age, and he was even older in the past. He had seen the third generation at his peak. At that time, even he could only rely on the dust release to barely suppress the opponent. Today, the performance of the third generation made Inoki feel that the former ninja professor was back. It's great to be young, Inoki murmured in his heart, looking at the third generation showing off his power on the ground. A hint of fanaticism flashed in his eyes. Who doesn't want to have a young body? Today's Iwa Ninja Village has no successors, and can only rely on himself to support itself. So after Inoki saw the third generation regaining his youth, he was moved. The third generation asked Inoki to help him complete something. After the incident, he would teach him the method of becoming younger. Although Inoki was skeptical about this, in the end he couldn't resist the temptation of his young body. He agreed to Sanday, and followed him to the land of fire. Crack, crack. The flames burned the air, making crackling sounds, and dozens of fire bombs instantly engulfed Naraku's body. In this case, let's let go and fight. In the sea of fire, Naraku's extremely excited voice came out. The next moment, a dazzling golden light flashed out from the flames, and then a nearly 10-meter tall golden skeleton giant appeared on the field. At this time, Naraku was standing inside the skeleton giant, with the golden six-pointed star pattern in his eyes exuding powerful pupil power. Chen. Escape. The technique of stripping away the original world. But at this moment, a voice came from above, and it was Inoki who spoke. At this moment, he raised his hands and put them on his chest, and then a pale light appeared between his hands, and then the light became brighter and brighter. The next moment, there was a bang, and a pale light instantly popped out from between Inoki's hands, until it finally turned into a huge cone-shaped object, and bombarded the golden Susan. Come. Up here is Chendun. The old guy really thinks highly of me. Naraku murmured. Boom, boom. Then a huge explosion roared, exploding instantly inside the cone-shaped object, and the golden Susanoo's formed new body became scattered, leaving only bursts of rich golden light. The three generations on the other side were not idle at this time. The main body and the two shadow clones began to form seals at the same time. Fire, escape, fire dragon bullet, earth, escape, earth dragon bullet, water, escape, water dragon bullet. In an instant, the huge red fire dragon and the blue water dragon appeared, and they all rushed forward quickly. At the same time, there was also an earth dragon that emerged from the ground and kept spitting mud bombs. Boom, boom, boom. For a moment, there were endless roars on the field, and a huge explosion raised a puff of smoke, and the figures of Naraku and Golden Susan were submerged in the smoke. However, the third generation was not happy at this time. He clearly felt that the ninjutsu he had just released did not hit the target at all point at the same time. Inoki also noticed something unusual at this time. A burst of rich golden light was released from the smoke. The golden light was so strong that it covered the entire area in the blink of an eye. Inoki reacted very quickly. Just when the golden light was about to touch him, he moved his body very quickly and dodged. At the same time, the third generation also made the same move. With his agile body, he quickly distanced himself from Jinmang like an ape. Boom. Boom. At this moment, the dazzling golden light seemed to turn into real energy. The airwave of this energy burst directly shook the surrounding air, causing sonic booms. A large amount of golden energy poured out crazily, and then condensed into a huge golden skeleton again. But this was not the end point. The golden energy like a wave continued to gush out, and then attached to the golden skeleton, turning it into a skeleton giant, until it finally reshaped its bones and flesh, and golden armor was spread all over the body. At the same time, the size of the golden Susanoo also continued to increase, until he finally turned into a golden giant nearly 100 meters high. Surrounded by golden energy, the aura is vast. From a distance, the golden Susanoo is like an ancient god of war, standing between heaven and earth. Both Inoki in the sky and Sandai on the ground were deeply shocked. The complete Susanoo is full of power. In this ninja world, except for Uchiha Madara, someone once again showed it. No matter it was Inoki or Sandai, their hearts instantly lost all will to fight. Facing this nearly 100 meter tall giant, they couldn't even feel the slightest desire to fight. At this time, Naraku was standing on the forehead of the Golden Susan, feeling the powerful power brought by the complete Susan. At this time, Naraku was actually a little intoxicated. This power was far greater than anything he had ever had before. It was only then that Naraku realized the difference between the eternal kaleidoscope and the ordinary kaleidoscope. Chapter 277 Taking advantage of your illness to kill you. Byakugan, Sharingan, and Samsurai are the three major pupil techniques in the ninja world. Among them, the Rinnegan is undoubtedly the most powerful, and it is also the ultimate evolutionary goal of the Sharingan. And under the Samsurai is the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. As for the Byakugan, it is also extremely powerful, one step up. Even compared to the reincarnation eye, it is not much different. But throughout the history of the ninja world, not to mention the Rinnegan and Sensekan, even the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan is extremely rare. In the past 100 years, besides Uchiha Madara, Naraku is probably the only one who has reached this point. At this time, Naraku, who was in Susan's body, was carefully sensing the powerful energy of the perfect Susan. Although he has not tried it, Naraku feels that now his complete Susanoo should be able to single-handedly defeat the strongest tailed beast, the Kyuubi. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a sonic boom sounded, and the huge Susan stretched out his hands. A burst of rich golden light condensed instantly, until finally two huge long swords appeared in Susan's hands. The 100-meter tall Susan held a giant sword tens of meters long. At this moment, Susan was so powerful that even the third generation and Inoki did not dare to act rashly. As strong men of the older generation, whether they are the third generation or Inoki, both of them have seen the strength of the first generation and Uchiha Madara, known as the god of ninja and ninja Shura. Especially Inoki, when he was not serving as Tsuchikage, he had seen Uchiha Madara take action. To this day, the opponent's monstrous combat power is still in his mind. Looking at the 100-meter tall golden Susanoo in front of him, Inoki's heart reappeared, that domineering figure. At this moment, Inoki began to want to quit. He and the third generation were just using each other. He wanted to get the third generation to return to his prime, and the third generation wanted to return to the position of Hokage. They both got what they needed. But now that he is encountering a strong opponent like Naraku, and he is still in the land of fire, Inoki will not put himself in danger foolishly. He knows that there is more than one young strong man like Naraku in Konoha today. Silverteeth flashed, and he had also experienced Hatake Kakishi's strength, and his strength was no worse than his own. At that time, he only managed to gain a slight upper hand with his dust release point. Boom. At this moment, the golden Susanoo suddenly moved, and while waving his arms, two golden giant swords danced instantly. In an instant, two golden sword lights tens of meters high struck directly towards the third generation on the ground. The sword light was full of power, and the huge impact directly tore a huge crack into the ground. The third generation who noticed this scene changed his expression instantly. Although his body has returned to his prime and his strength has increased, there is still a big gap compared with the complete Susan in front of him. It can even be said that the two are not on the same level superior. Therefore, facing the sword light in front of him, he did not dare to resist. Blue chakra instantly filled his body, and his figure began to move quickly, trying to avoid the sword light's attack. Buff. Suddenly, a bright red blood splashed out. Although Sunday moved very fast, he was still injured by the sword light in the end. It can be seen that there is a hideous wound on his shoulder. The wound is so deep that it almost severed his entire right arm. Well, with a muffled groan from his mouth, the third generation held back the severe pain and glanced in one direction with extremely complicated eyes. There was the temple blocked by the golden Susanoo. Then he quickly raised his hand to form a seal, and Sunday was about to use reverse channeling to leave here. He knew that he was no match for Naraku, and if he continued to stay here, he might even be killed on the spot. Although he has not yet saved Asuma and the Daimyo, the next 3 generations can no longer think about this. He decided to save his own life first. In the golden Susanoo, Naraku, who noticed the third generation's movements, shook his head secretly. In his opinion, the current third generation has completely changed. Although he was also hypocritical and greedy for power in the past, at least he had contributed to Konoha village, and there were many people he cared about in the village. But now he has completely changed his appearance. In order to escape and save himself, he can even abandon his son's life and death. The golden Susanoo Naraku looked down at the third generation on the ground with cold eyes. This time, you can't escape. The next moment, the pupil power of Naraku's left eye burst out instantly, and his figure disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Sunday's arm that was about to be raised stopped, and a figure could be seen standing behind him. It was Naraku. At this time, he reached out and held Sunday's arm. Sunday tried to break free, but was unable to break free at all, just as he was preparing for his next move. Crack. Crack. A blue light instantly rose from Naraku's body, and the dazzling blue light turned into lightning bolts as thick as his wrist. All of these thunder and lightning spread along Naraku's arms towards the third generation. Almost instantly, Sunday felt a strong sense of numbness coming from his body, and his body even started to shake a little. On the other side, the 100-meter tall golden Susanoo was staring at Inoki. If the opponent made any abnormal move, the golden Susanoo would launch a fierce offensive against him. But Naraku was overly worried. At this time, Inoki had no intention of rescuing the third generation. He already wanted to leave here. As for the life and death of the third generation, he didn't care at all. And after the third generation here experienced intensive thunder and lightning, he felt as if his whole body had lost consciousness, and he could not even stand completely. Black flame thunder. Taking advantage of your illness to kill you. Naraku has no idea of merciful treatment and mercy. Today, he is going to completely eliminate the third generation here, to prevent him from causing trouble behind his back in the future. After all, the current third generation has completely stood against them, and Tsunade's plan to unify the ninja world has begun to be implemented. In the future, neither Hisneak nor Kakashi will be able to be in the village often. If the third generation secretly into the village and did some irreversible things, that would not be what Naraku wanted. So in order to prevent himself from regretting it, Naraku decided to take advantage of this opportunity to directly deal with the third generation. As the pupil power of Naraku's right eye burst out, dark flames instantly rose up on the third generation's body, and dense black thunder and lightning was hidden under the flames. Laugh. The moment the black flame thunder fell on the third generation, a burst of white smoke slowly rose up, and there was also a burning smell. Now Naraku has the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. Not only has he mastered the complete Susanoo, but the abilities attached to his eyes have also been enhanced several times. Chapter 278. The third generation died. The strange black ape. After possessing the eternal kaleidoscope, Naraku's pupil power has been enhanced several times. Even if he uses the abilities of his eyes as before, it will only consume some pupil power and will not leave blood and tears every time. But Naraku knew that this was just a small number of uses of his abilities. If he used the pupil technique continuously in a battle, the blood and tears would also appear again. At this moment, the third generation, who was burned by the black flames, gritted his teeth and let out a cry of pain. At this time, his entire back was covered with dark flames. Maybe it won't be long before he will be the same as Danzo. Boom. But at this moment, a cloud of white smoke suddenly appeared next to the third generation. After the smoke cleared, a figure appeared next to the third generation. This is the Ape Demon Clan. Looking at the ape covered in black hair standing next to Sunday, Naraku frowned. He knew that the 3 generations of psychic beasts belonged to the Ape Demon Clan, but he had never seen the ape in front of him. Even in the original work, this black-furred ape did not appear. The next scene surprised him even more. The black ape stretched out a paw and placed it on the black flame on the third generation's back. Then there seemed to be some suction on that claw, and the dark black thunder began to gather towards his hand. After a while, the flames on Sanday's back were almost completely absorbed by him. The black ape can actually absorb the black thunder. Naraku watched this scene with trembling eyes. The next moment, Naraku swung his right arm, and the storage scroll hidden in his cuff was activated instantly. Boom. White smoke appeared, and when the smoke dissipated, Naraku had a long black knife in his hand, and the sharp blade exuded coldness. Swish. Without any hesitation, Naraku's figure flashed, and when he reappeared, he was already at the side of the black ape. He exerted force with his right arm, and the invisible wind attribute instantly spread throughout the entire sword god, and then Naraku swung out a sword. Kai. The invisible blade tore through the air and landed on the black ape's arm before he could react. Clang. The next moment, there was a crisp sound of metal collision, and at the same time, there was a flash of sparks, as if the blade was not touching flesh and blood, but steel. Boom. After seeing the black blade blocked by the black ape, Naraku raised his right leg high, light blue chakra condensed on the leg, and kicked the ape directly in the next moment. In an instant, a huge force was transmitted to black ape, and his body was visible to the naked eye, flying towards the distance like a cannonball. The huge impact directly broke the wall of the temple behind him. However, Naraku did not relax his vigilance about this. He did not think that the black ape could be eliminated with just that kick. The kick just now made Naraku think of some information. That is, the third generation of psychic beasts, the ape demon, has an indestructible body, so the blade just now was blocked by it. Vajra chain. Powerful chakra burst out from Naraku's body, and in an instant, 5 golden chains protruded from his back, rushing towards the black ape like dancing snakes. Call out, call out, call out. The chain was extremely fast and rushed into the temple in almost the blink of an eye. The next moment, clang, 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 there was a crisp sound of metal collision, accompanied by bursts of sparks, while the diamond chain entangled the black ape. Naraku once again shifted his target to the third generation. At this time, he had collapsed on the ground, and you could see that his back was once again covered with black thunder. Although the black ape just absorbed some black flame thunder, you must know that the black flame thunder has the same characteristics of never extinguishing like Amaterasu. Even if there is only a little spark contaminating anything, it will eventually become fiery. Just like today's the third generation, because the black flame thunder on his body had not been completely absorbed, the fire struck back again. The third generation like this reminded Naraku of Danzo a few years ago. who was also burned to death by the black flame thunder after a slight hesitation. Naraku suddenly waved the black sword in his hand, and the invisible blade appeared and struck hard at Sandai. Although he was aware of it, the third generation at this time had no power to fight back, and due to the long-term erosion of black flame thunder, his consciousness was even somewhat weakened. Buff. The next moment, a burst of bright red blood splashed, and the third generation's head fell to the side. You can see that there was a ferocious knife wound on his right chest. There seemed to be wind energy remaining there, and the wound continued. Expand. The life breath from his body was rapidly draining away, and then the young face of the third generation that was visible to the naked eye instantly turned old, with ravines and wrinkles all over his face. Naraku, who killed the third generation, did not feel any fluctuation in his heart. The third generation has been his enemy since a long time ago. The death of the third generation can only be attributed to his inferior strength. After confirming that the third generation was completely dead, Naraku's right eye trembled slightly, and his pupil power burst out, and then the black thunder attached to the corpse slowly flowed into his pupil. After recovering all the black flame thunder, Naraku conveniently sealed the third generation's body in a scroll, and he was going to take it back to Tsunade and others for decision. Sarutobi Hiruzen is dead. At this time, Anoki, who was standing in the sky, looked surprised. He couldn't believe that a ninja professor who once existed was killed by a junior who was less than 20 years old today. For a moment Anoki felt very sad. As a person of the same generation as the third generation, at this time he really realized a problem in his heart. It seems that I'm really old, Anoki whispered in his heart, and then he began to control his body to fly upwards, and disappeared here after a while. Naraku did not stop Noki from leaving. Now he is just here to solve the daimyo's problem. Moreover, if Noki, who is at such a age, had any accidents in the land of fire, how could the Iwa Ninja village just let it go? Now Tsunade's plan is to conquer Sunagakure village first, and Naraku doesn't want to disrupt his plan. After Anoki left, Naraku's scarlet eyes trembled slightly, then returned to normal the next moment, and the 100-meter tall golden Susan also slowly disappeared. Naraku felt it was a pity that the full body of Susanoo was used for the first time, but he failed to show its due power. He was thinking that, if he had the opportunity in the future, he would definitely find some tailed beasts for Susanoo to practice with. Call out. At this moment, several sounds broke through the air, and the golden chains came back, and there was a black shadow tied to the chains, which was the black ape. Naraku carefully looked at the black ape in front of him. He couldn't figure out that a psychic beast could absorb the black thunder. What a strange black ape. Chapter 279. The spiritual sustenance of Sand Hidden Village is gone. Outside the temple, boom, just when Naraku was about to take a closer look at the black ape, he turned into a burst of white mist and disappeared. Naraku frowned slightly. He knew that black ape had returned to the spiritual world. The ape demon clan is really interesting, Naraku murmured softly. He had already made up his mind that he would definitely try out various psychic worlds if he had the opportunity in the future. He was very curious about these psychic beasts. Sure enough, he has been taken to the psychic world. After entering the temple, Naraku found that Asuma was missing. He guessed that he had been taken to the spiritual world by the monkey demon and the others. When the black ape suddenly appeared, Naraku also sensed another aura, but he didn't pay attention to it at the time. Now it seems that it was also an ape. It seems that there is another enemy. Naraku smiled bitterly in his heart. At that time, in order to lure the third generation over, he only seriously injured Asuma without killing him. Now that the other party has been rescued, after learning that his father was killed, Asuma will definitely come to Naraku one day in the future. Revengeful. Asuma, the monkey demon clan, wait for me. With this thought in his mind, Naraku turned his head and looked to the other side, where the fainted daimyo was still drowsy. Keep sleeping, daimyo-sama. Naraku stretched out his finger, and a sharp energy condensed in his hand, and then an invisible wind blade condensed in the air. The next moment, the wind blade tore through the air and sped forward, inside the damning mansion. Although Naraku made a big fuss here before, and killed more than a dozen guards of the Sarutobi clan, now the place has been cleaned up, everything has been sorted out, and the high-end gorgeous, and wealthy damning mansion has been restored again. The people in the damning mansion are used to things like assassinations of daimyo, and they believe that the daimyo will return safely as usual. In the mansion, in the daimyo's office, Amada, who is the daimyo's assistant, is sitting in the office processing documents on the table. Amada is a middle-aged man with a somewhat slender figure. Judging from his skillful way of handling documents, you can tell that this is not the first day he has done this kind of thing. In fact, as the daimyo's assistant, he was almost responsible for most of the daimyo's work, except for interviewing some important people and other matters that required the daimyo's presence. He was basically responsible for completing other government affairs. Although Yushin has always worked hard and never complained, sometimes he would have some opinions, but he did not dare to express them. After all, he is just an ordinary person and has no power behind him, so he can only choose to be inferior to others. But Yushin may not know that today he will welcome the most important person in his life. The next day, within the Kingdom of Wind, on a relatively hidden road, there are dozens of figures sneaking quietly. They are the elite team of 100 people led by Kakashi Point. After successfully into the Kingdom of Wind, they traveled for nearly a night and now arrived at a location not far from Tsunagakure village, where the shadow of Tsunagakure village could be vaguely seen. After arriving here, Kakashi signaled everyone to stop and then ordered everyone to hide nearby. He planned to enter Tsunagakure village alone to check the situation. Although he is leading an elite team this time, Tsunagakure village is a great ninja village after all. Although it is now in decline, it still has some background, so Kakashi does not dare to be careless. Only when you know yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles. In any war, intelligence is often an extremely important part. After settling the team in place and leaving the mark of Flying Thunder God on several captains, Kakashi disappeared in a flash. At the same time, in Tsunagakure village, inside the Kazakage building, Granny Chiyo, Ibizo, and several elderly people all gathered here at this time. Konoha village is so deceptive. Even though they have signed an alliance treaty with us, they still want to invade our Tsunagakure village, a white-haired sturdy old man said with an angry look on his face. That's right, Konoha village doesn't take our Tsunagakure village seriously. When we act like this, someone on the side said in agreement. Seriously, our Tsunagakure village is weak now, and the 4th Kazakage-sama died unexpectedly. Even if Konoha village really wants to attack our Tsunagakure village, who can stop it? Ugh. For a time, everyone in the building was talking. They were all senior figures in Tsunagakure village, and each of them controlled some power in the village. The reason why Granny Chiyo called them over was to tell them that Tsunagakure village was now in a life and death situation, and Chiyo also had some luck in her heart. She thought that there was strength in numbers, and maybe after everyone discussed together, they could come up with 1 or 2 solutions. But she was disappointed in the end. They didn't know how long they had been arguing here, and they didn't come up with a result until the end. Some people proposed a desperate fight with Konoha village. Even if Tsunagakure village ceased to exist in the future, Konoha's vitality would be greatly damaged. Some people also proposed to negotiate with the Leaf village first to see what they want to do. If it is not too much, they can accept it, in order to save the Tsunagakure village. In response, Chiyo bluntly told them Tsunade's ultimate goal, to unify the ninja world. But when everyone here heard this information, no one believed it. They all thought that Chiyo was being alarmist, or that Tsunade was having a whim. Grandma Chiyo also had nothing to say about this. After she raised her head and looked at each other, Ibizo found a hint of helplessness in the other's eyes. Then she opened her mouth and invited everyone out, leaving only Ibizo alone. Maybe Tsunagakure village needs a real cage, Chiyo said with a complicated expression. This time Tsunagakure village has really encountered an unprecedented crisis. Just last night, the border manager sent news that Konoha village has begun to spread news and prepare to launch a war against Tsunagakure village. Although Mark didn't say much in the letter, Granny Chiyo knew that many of the border guards in the Kingdom of Wind may have begun to feel fear in their hearts. Maybe it's not just the border guards. Today she informed them that some of them are timid before they fight. Although Chiyo was aware of this problem, she had no way To change it point you must know that Shadow is not only a powerful ninja, but more importantly, he is the spiritual sustenance of a village. It seems that, as long as Shadow is around, their village will not be in danger and their family will not be harmed. But now the spiritual sustenance of Tsunagakure village is gone. Chapter 280 Sneaking into the Wind Shadow Building. Do we really have to compromise with Orochimaru? In the Kazekage building, Granny Chiyo was currently saying something to Ibiza with a lonely expression point. Although they were very reluctant, at this time they still considered Orochimaru's appointment as the 5th Kazekage point. If it were in the past, letting Konoha's traitorous ninja serve as the Kazekage would be ironic and nonsense. If there is any way, Chiyo will not consider this matter, but now that foreign enemies are attacking, it is difficult for Tsunagakure village to survive this difficulty with its own strength point. If Tsunade really sends an army to attack Tsunagakure village, Tsunagakure village will definitely fall completely within 10 days, and then the entire Tsunagakure village will cease to exist. Point at this time, Chiyo was in a dilemma point. If there were only two paths left in front of her, the first was to compromise with Orochimaru and agree to let him serve as the 5th Kazekage. In this way, with the power of Orochimaru, Tsunagakure village could barely avoid this difficulty. However, this road is full of unknowns and risks, let alone whether Orochimaru alone can withstand the invasion of Konoha village. Also, even if Orochimaru successfully prevents Konohagakure from invading Tsunagakure village, the entire Tsunagakure village will be under Orochimaru's control. At that time, if Orochimaru wants to do something to harm Tsunagakure village, he will not. People can stop it. As for the second way, it is to bow to Konoha and cede all the land of the Kingdom of Wind to the Kingdom of Fire. From then on, the Kingdom of Wind and Tsunagakure village disappeared. All the ninjas in Tsunagakure village have surrendered to Konoha. As for the civilians in the Kingdom of Wind, it depends on how Tsunade handles them. Point both paths, no matter which one they took, gave Chiyo deep concerns. Damn. Alyosha. Chiyo cursed in his heart. Point. If Alyosha's recklessness hadn't cost him his life, how could she worry about these things, now that she was still in retirement? At this time, Chiyo deeply felt that none of the Kazekages in Tsunagakure village were very reliable. First, the 3rd Kazekage suddenly disappeared before the 3rd ninja war, and now the 4th Kazekage lost his life rashly. Point. Granny Chiyo really feels that the current Tsunagakure village may be coming to an end. Sure. Enough. The news has already reached the ears of these people. Hokage-sama, this pressure is a bit high. In a hidden location near the Kazekage building, a silver-haired man wearing a black mask murmured twice. The man was Kakashi. Point. At this time, you can see that there is an elderly white-haired man lying at his feet. He is the one who was in the Kazekage building just now, but at this time, he has fainted and lost consciousness. Just now, Kakashi took advantage of him, knocked him unconscious, and then used Jinjutsu to get some information from his mouth, including what Chiyo told them just now. Kakashi, who was informed of the information, immediately knew that Tsunade and the others had deliberately released it in order to cause panic within Tsunagakure village, so that it would be easier for them to carry out the subsequent work of regaining Tsunagakure village. But now the pressure is on Kakashi's side. Tsunagakure village already knows the existence of their team, and will definitely be prepared in advance. Maybe they have laid a trap now, and are waiting for them to appear. Kakashi did not dare to be careless, and decided to continue to inquire about information in Tsunagakure village. Although he is very confident in his own strength, there are hundreds of team members in this operation. He is not only responsible for his own life, but also for the lives of those team members. Then, after Kakashi quietly dealt with the man at his feet, he quietly sneaked into the Kazekage building. Point. He wanted to obtain some important information directly, and this was undoubtedly the best choice. Point. Although Chiyo has laid countless traps in the Kazekage building, to Kakashi today, these are nothing. Point. With basically no effort, he successfully sneaked into the building and arrived near the Kazekage's office. Point. Kakashi decided to observe here to see if he could get some important information. Point. At this time, it was in another place in Sand Hidden Village. Point. The place where the 4th Kazekage Rasa once lived, and Rasa's 3 children lived here. Point. Although Alyosha has passed away now, due to the special care of Chiyo's mother-in-law, the lives of these children have not changed much, except for the lack of father's love. Point. But the lack of fatherly love is dispensable for the young man in front of him. Point. In a large courtyard, There is a man with short red hair and a red word love printed on his forehead. He is also carrying a gourd about the same size as his body on his young body. It is Gaara, the son of the 4th Kazekage, the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Yes, there is another level of identity, that is, he is a contemporary descendant of Mount Myaboku. At this time, there is a great ode about the size of an adult around Gaara, as if to protect him. For Gaara, Rasa's death had no impact on him at all. He was still exercising crazily every day, practicing ninjutsu, and increasing his strength. In Gaara's memory, Rasa never cared about him. No matter how much harm he suffered, how much inhuman treatment he received, or how wronged he was, Rasa, as a father, never paid attention to him from beginning to end. So Gaara has no feelings for Rasa. Even for the current Tsunagakure village, he doesn't have much emotion. The reason why he chose to return to Tsunagakure village is just because the environment of Tsunagakure village is convenient for him to practice ninjutsu. Gaara, Fukasaku-senin informed us to return to Mount Myaboku as soon as possible. In the next period of time, there may be a strong wind in Tsunagakure village. At this moment, the great Ode next to Gaara spoke, his voice dull, like the voice of a middle-aged man. Go back to Mount Myomu. I know about Todash, Gaara said with a slight nod. His voice was cold and emotionless, without any emotion at all. Gaara then turned around and walked towards the room. He was going to clean up briefly before returning to Mount Myaboku. Gaara may not know that, just after he left there, Toad Grey came to the courtyard. In a flashpoint a figure appeared in Toad Grey's eyes, with long white hair and red cinnabar on his forehead. It was Orochimaru. The moment Toad Grey saw Orochimaru, his eyes narrowed slightly. Although the face in front of him was very unfamiliar, Toad Grey felt a vaguely familiar and disgusting feeling. It was as if the person in front of Toad Grey was not a person, but a poisonous snake. Oh, it turns out to be the Toad from Mount Myaboku. Could it be that Jiraiya and that guy are also nearby? Looking at the Toad Ash in front of him, Orochimaru whispered, his pale pupils exuding waves of coldness. Chapter 281 The Perfect Jinchuriki. Gaara. Sand Hidden Village. Outside a house, Toad Grey looked at the white-haired man in front of him, especially after looking into those pale eyes. His eyes trembled suddenly. It's actually a white eye. Toad Grey's face changed slightly. Among the many toads in Myomu Mountain, although Toad Grey is not strong, his experience is extremely rich, so he is no stranger to the Byakugan. He has met the owner of the Byakugan more than once. Are you from the Hyuga clan? Toad Grey asked Orochimaru in front of him. In his impression, the owners of the Byakugan were basically from the Hyuga clan, so he thought that the person in front of him was also from the Hyuga clan. But it was obvious that he was overthinking it. Orochimaru stared at the great Ode in front of him with cold eyes. At this time, he also realized one thing, that is, the people who channeled the Toad were not Jiraiya and Naraku. Is he the descendant of Myomu Mountain? At this time, Orochimaru thought of something he heard in Raichi Cave not long ago, that the true descendant of Mount Myoki was found. Orochimaru suddenly became interested when he thought of this. Originally, he came here just to meet the one-tailed Jinchuriki of Tsunagakure village, but what he didn't expect was that he would meet the descendant of Mount Myaboku. Orochimaru was a little surprised. He was also a descendant of the 3 holy places. Since he met him, Orochimaru had to visit this colleague. After Orochimaru successfully passed the test of Raichi Cave using Kimimura's body, he also became the successor of Raichi Cave. It's in this courtyard. Orochimaru ignored Toad Grey's extremely ugly expression and walked straight into the courtyard. When Toad Hui saw this, his pupils shrank, and then he quickly conveyed the news to Myomu Mountain without any hesitation. Then he lay on the ground with his paws, exerted force suddenly, jumped up high in an instant, and then came to the yard one step ahead of Orochimaru. At this time, Gaara was also ready, and walked out of the house, when he happened to run into Orochimaru head on. The two looked at each other, and Gaara instantly felt a cold aura falling on him, as if the person he was looking at was not a person, but a poisonous python. At this moment, when Toad Grey opened his mouth to say something, he was interrupted by a white bone snake that suddenly appeared. A white bone snake that was several meters long appeared behind Toad Hui. It surged at extremely high speed and launched an attack directly towards him. Toads and snakes are natural enemies. Even though the current snake is a bone snake, this has not changed. The two instantly fought together. However, Toad Hui, who was not good at fighting, soon fell into a disadvantage, and the white bone snake entangled him with its body. Well, Toad Hui, whose body was tightly locked by the bone snake, let out a cry of pain. "I'm sorry, Gaara." The next moment, Toadash, who couldn't hold on any longer, turned into a burst of white mist with a bang. Haha, the toads in Myomu Mountain are really afraid of death. Orochimaru sneered. Then his cold eyes fell on Gaara, and then a look of surprise appeared on his face. At this time, he could already see that the Gaara in front of him was the one-tailed Jinchuriki. He didn't expect Myomushin to choose a Jinchuriki as his successor, and he felt a little surprised. Just as Orochimaru was observing him, Gaara was also observing him. I don't know if he was confident or not afraid at all. Gaara actually didn't care about Toadash's disappearance. The other party's performance made Orochimaru immediately interested. The next moment, boom, with Orochimaru at the center, the originally stable air around him suddenly became turbulent, with layers of airwaves visible to the naked eye rolling toward the surroundings, and then a violent momentum fell towards Gaara. Wow. At this moment, a ball of yellow sand emerged from the ground at an extremely fast speed, and then turned into a shield to block Gaara's sky. Boom. The next moment, the violent momentum fell on the yellow sand shield, and in just a moment, the shield collapsed like earth. In an instant, Gaara felt a strong sense of oppression falling on him, and his young body began to tremble instantly. At this time, several cracks could be seen on the ground under his feet. "Let me help you." Just when Gaara couldn't hold on any longer, a familiar voice sounded in his mind. "It is good." Gaara, who heard this voice, completely relaxed his mind and gave up control of his body. "Hahaha, master, let me meet you, little snake, for a while." A burst of wild laughter came from Gaara's mouth, and then an equally violent energy burst out from his body, instantly dispelling the powerful sense of oppression. At the same time, Gaara's appearance changed drastically. Several purple patterns appeared on his face, and his face gradually became ferocious. At the same time, a tail made of yellow sand poked out from his back. Now he can safely hand over his body to Ichibi. He and Ichibi have already been living in peace for a long time. The relationship between the two is very good. They both regard each other as their most cherished partner. This also makes Gaara become a perfect Jinchuriki at a young age. It's really interesting. Seeing Gaara's transformation, Orochimaru showed a smile on his face. He was also very interested in the Jinchuriki, and didn't mind taking the tailed beast back for a search. Boom. Then Orochimaru kicked his feet on the ground, and he quickly rushed forward. In just the blink of an eye, he was in front of Gaara. Snapped. The next moment, Orochimaru reached out with his right hand, and swung his palm forward. Suddenly, the wind roared in his palm, and the wind was as strong as a knife. The hands wrapped in blue chakra fell directly on Gaara's body. Snapped. 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 Just before Gaara could react, Orochimaru's body flashed, and his hands kept moving out. In an instant, more than a dozen palms were thrown out, and all of them hit the target. Until the end, Orochimaru jumped again to distance himself from Gaara, and then he stood there, and began to observe Gaara's changes. "My uncle." At this time, Gaara's body was controlled by the One Tail. He roared and was about to use his chakra to attack Orochimaru. However, the next moment, his expression suddenly changed. He was unable to use his chakra. How is this going? Ichibi was a little confused. This was the first time he had encountered this situation. After he and Gaara became the perfect Jinchuriki together at this time, Orochimaru raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a smile. Sure enough, even if a Jinchuriki wants to use chakra, he has to go through various acupuncture points in the body. Orochimaru whispered in his mouth. Chapter 282 As my experimental subject, you should be considered qualified. Well, around the courtyard, just when the guards responsible for protecting Gaara noticed something unusual, and wanted to rush over to rescue him, several long snakes appeared in front of them. The moment these long snakes appeared, they spit out some venom at them, and those who were hit by the venom all fell to the ground without exception. There were also some lucky guards who escaped the venom attack, but were still entangled in the snake. The guards were soon all brought down. In fact, the guards who were originally responsible for protecting Gaara were not that weak, at least they were at the Jonin level. However, affairs in Sunagakure village have been busy recently, and Chiyo has mobilized a large number of manpower for this purpose. So Gaara's guards were temporarily replaced by Chunin, and the reason why Chiyo did this was because she knew that Gaara had become a perfect Jinchuriki. Gaara, who has become a perfect Jinchuriki, has a certain level of combat power. Even compared to some experienced Jounin, Gaara is not inferior at all. Even if it were not for the limitation of age, Gaara, who has become a perfect Jinchuriki, has a certain fighting ability. Luo is definitely a solid shadow level powerhouse point. If there hadn't been the attack of Konoha village and Orochimaru's desire to become the 5th Kazekage, Chiyo would have made plans to vigorously train Gaara. It's just that the plan has never kept up with the changes. Gaara has just shown his talents, but the disaster of Sunagakure has quietly arrived. In the courtyard. At this time, Orochimaru had opened his Byakugan, his pale eyes staring at Gaara in front of him. In his sight, the chakra flow path on Gaara's body and the acupuncture points in various parts of his body were all clearly visible. Just now, he used a special palm technique of the Hyuga clan to block some of Gaara's acupuncture points. It was precisely because of this that Ichibi was unable to use the chakra in his body. Wow. But at this moment, the ground under Orochimaru's feet suddenly lifted, and then a ball of yellow sand flashed out and blasted towards Orochimaru. Orochimaru seemed to have been prepared for this. He kicked his feet on the ground and jumped back quickly, easily dodging Huangsha's attack. Latent Shadow Snake Hand. At the same time, Orochimaru flicked his sleeves, and in an instant, several long snakes were thrown out from the sleeves. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The long snake spit out the letter, swam in the air, and rushed towards Gaara, but the next moment they were covered by a ball of yellow sand. Sure enough, simply sealing the acupuncture points with chakra can only seal them for a short time. Orochimaru lowered his head and looked at the ferocious looking Gaara in front of him. At this time, he noticed that all the acupuncture points on Gaara's body that had just been blocked by him had been unlocked, and the chakra flow on his body had also changed. It became smoother. After all, it's the tail beast chakra. It's not easy to suppress. Orochimaru stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, with a hint of exploration in his pale eyes. As a research geek, he was now somewhat interested in tail beast chakra. The one-tailed Jinchuriki, as my test subject, should be considered qualified. Orochimaru thought in his mind, raised his hands, and began to form seals quickly. Psychic art. Then, he slapped his palm on the ground. Boom, boom. The next moment, 2 huge white fogs appeared, and a breeze blew by. After the white fog dissipated, 2 huge figures, one black and one white, appeared on the field. These are 2 bone snakes that are several meters long. Their entire bodies are made of bones and they look extremely hard. Then, under the control of Orochimaru, the 2 bone snakes swooped towards Gaara at the same time. The grinning bone snake revealed the extremely sharp looking bone teeth inside. Why does this bone snake look a bit like the corpse bone veins of the Kaguya clan? Gaara in front murmured. At this time, Ichibi was still controlling the body. Having survived for nearly 1,000 years, he is no stranger to the Kaguya clan. Not only these bone snakes, but also Orochimaru, also gave him a strange feeling. He even had the illusion that Orochimaru felt the same as the 6 paths sage breath. However, this feeling was very weak, and Ichibi just thought that he felt wrong. Try my cannon. Ichibi suddenly opened his mouth, and Gaara's already extremely distorted face looked even more ferocious from then on. Wind. Escape. Practice blank bullets. A burst of violent chakra energy condensed in Gaara's mouth, and then blasted towards the bone snake in front of him like cannonballs. Boom, boom, boom. The speed of the first tail was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, several cannonballs were blasted out, and the next moment they landed directly on the 2 bone snakes. The 2 collided with each other, producing a huge impact. Multiple cracks appeared on the body of the bone snake visible to the naked eye, and some bones were even directly shattered. The bodies of the 2 bone snakes instantly became dilapidated, but even though their bodies were damaged, the bone snakes still did not stop, and continued to attack Gaara with their broken bodies. Compared with ordinary psychic beasts, the bone snake created by Orochimaru using his own bones is obviously stronger and not afraid of death. Grandma, you are really a bunch of stinky bones from the Kaguya clan. Grandpa, I won't play with you anymore. At this time, Ichibi had already seen that Orochimaru's strength was unfathomable. His body, even with his powerful tailed beast, was no match for him. In order to ensure Gaara's safety, he prepared to escape. Wow. Under the control of Kazuo, a large amount of yellow sand sprang out from the ground, drowning the two broken bone snakes almost instantly. Kazuo took the opportunity to control Gaara's body and sneak in underground. For him who can control the yellow sand, moving under the ground is like a fish entering the sea. Not only is it not difficult at all, but it is also very comfortable. In just a few seconds, he had already sneaked hundreds of meters on the ground. Hey, Gaara, after escaping this time, you should quickly go back to Myomu Mountain to practice. When you grow up a little and your strength improves, we will come out together to avenge this stinking snake. With a thought, Gaara in the consciousness space heard these words. Gaara nodded at this. Even if Ichibi didn't say anything, he had such a plan. Although the environment of Sand Hidden Village was very suitable for him to practice, he was too weak now, and with the tail in his body, he could easily be defeated. People are worried about you. Just when Ichibi was discussing things with Gaara, a vacuum area instantly appeared in front of them, and the yellow sand there had been cleared away. A figure stood there, with pale pupils and long white hair. It was Orochimaru. It can be seen that there are hundreds of squirming bodies around Orochimaru. All of them are snakes. Chapter 283 Complete Tailed Beast Transformation. I actually caught up with you. Looking at Orochimaru intercepting him in front, Ichiba's expression changed slightly. Although he had sensed Orochimaru's strength, he did not expect that he would not be able to escape. For a moment, Ichiba's face became more and more ugly, and Gaara, who shared his body with him, also felt something bad in his heart. Become my test subject. There was a sneer on Orochimaru's lips, and then he waved his hand, and dozens of long snakes rushed towards Gaara's position in front of him. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The long snake opened its mouth and spit out the letter, making a series of hissing sounds. At this time, Kazuo also realized that something was wrong, and his playful eyes became cautious. Gaara, hold it in. After muttering in his heart, a violent energy burst out from Gaara's body. Wow. At the same time, a large amount of yellow sand sprang out from the ground, covering Gaara's body and the long snakes. Get ready to transform into a tailed beast. Feeling the extremely violent energy in front of him, Orochimaru's eyes flashed. In fact, Orochimaru was no stranger to the one-tailed beast. During the Third Ninja War, he had fought against the one-tailed beast that had completely transformed into a tailed beast. But at that time, because Ichibi had been sealed for a long time, he had a violent personality and only knew how to burst out energy to destroy at will, so he was used by Sunagakure village as a war machine. Compared to before, Orochimaru felt that Ichibi behaved more like a human being now. Boom. At this moment, a violent momentum appeared in front. Yellow sand was flying all over the sky, and a huge figure was vaguely visible inside the yellow sand. Following Orochimaru's line of sight, he saw that it was a tapir that was all yellow and covered with purple patterns. It was none other than Shukaku Ichibi. At this time, he has completely transformed into a tailed beast, and violent energy continues to burst out from his body. But at this time, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly. In his opinion, although Shukaku in front of him had completely transformed into a tailed beast, Shukaku was much smaller than the last time he saw him. However, Orochimaru didn't pay too much attention to this. Although he didn't know much about tailed beasts, he also knew that they were living beings without a physical body, and their size was not that important to them. Just let me take care of you for a while. An extremely arrogant voice came from Yuu's mouth, and then he saw his feet kicking on the ground, and his whole body rushed forward at a high speed. As for the dozens of long snakes that were originally blocking him, they were all turned into yellow sand at this time. Submerged. Call out. A sound broke through the air, and a giant yellow tail was seen blasting towards Orochimaru, with purple lines covering the giant tail. In response, Orochimaru kicked his feet on the ground, and jumped away from his original position. Boom. There was a loud noise, and the giant tail fell directly to the ground, and a deep pit suddenly appeared. Gudu. Gudu. At this moment, a burst of water bubbles appeared in the deep pit. At this time, they were already 100 meters underground, but now a blow from the tail penetrated the ground and touched the water flow below the ground point. Boom. First there were blisters, and then in just a few seconds, a violent stream of water suddenly burst out. When Shukaku saw this, he exerted force on his legs and jumped out of the huge pit. As for Orochimaru, his method was even simpler. Light blue chakra emerged from his feet, and then he stood directly on the gushing water. The next moment, he followed the water to the ground. Boom, boom, boom. Practice blank ammunition. Just when Orochimaru appeared on the ground, several sounds of breaking through the air were heard in an instant, and several cannonballs composed of invisible air were blasted in his direction. Orochimaru's pupils shrank, and then he raised his hands without hesitation, and began to quickly form seals. Wind release. Great breakthrough. After completing the seal, Orochimaru opened his mouth and spit out a fierce wind. Normally, low-level ninjutsu like the wind release great breakthrough cannot compete with Shukaku's moves, but today's Orochimaru is different. Now he not only has the body of Kimimaro, who has perfectly mastered the Kaguya clan's blood inheritance limits and corpse veins, but also has a pair of pure Byakugan point. After the two combined with each other, Orochimaru's strength has greatly increased. Compared with his previous body, he now not only masters to top blood inheritance limits, but his own chakra volume has also increased several times. Therefore, even if it is just an ordinary seal level ninjutsu, it is still very powerful in his hands. Boom. On the field, the fierce wind and invisible shells collided together, and a violent impact swept across the field in an instant. That's Shukaku. What's going on? Did Ichibi go berserk again? The movement caused by the battle between Orochimaru and Shukaku attracted the attention of many people around. After seeing Shukaku's familiar body, their expressions instantly changed. Everyone in Tsunagakure village, whether they are ninjas or civilians, are no strangers to Ichibi Shukaku. Among all the Jinkriki, Gaara's original sealing technique is undoubtedly the weakest, which also resulted in Shukaku sealed in his body being the most violent of all tailed beasts. Everyone in Tsunagakure village has a strong sense of fear towards Shukaku. Go and inform Chihayo-sama. Quickly, everyone, evacuate the crowd, and do your best to reduce casualties. A team leader patrolling nearby made a decision quickly, after seeing Shukaku point. After sending out a team member to notify Chihayo, he and other team members began to disperse the surrounding crowds. However, even though they were fast, Shukaku and Orochimaru were too powerful after all, and even the aftermath of the attack was not something that ordinary people could withstand. Soon several people were hit by the aftermath of the attack and lost their lives on the spot. Although Shukaku was aware of this, he couldn't care so much now. In the face of a powerful enemy, it would be good if he could protect himself. If he doesn't care, Orochimaru won't care even less. In some ways, Orochimaru's heart is extremely cold-blooded. The two continued to fight regardless, but the situation was not friendly to Shukaku. From the beginning, he was at a disadvantage. If it weren't for the advantage of the surrounding environment, he would probably have lost. Inside the Kazekage building, Chihayo, who was processing some information, seemed to sense something. She quickly opened the window, and when she reappeared, she was already on the roof. Even though the distance was far away, Chihayo still felt a familiar aura. Her expression changed instantly, and then she rushed in that direction without hesitation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284. 10,000 snakes were scared away. Kazekage building. Just after Chihayo noticed Ichibi's movement and left here, she didn't notice a figure hiding in the dark quietly following her. It was Kakashi. Ichibi went berserk. Kakashi, who was following Chihayo, frowned slightly. Like Chihayo, he also sensed the familiar chakra fluctuations of Uchiha Shukaku. Even if he didn't feel it, the second tail in his body told him about it. Kakashi. His voice sounded in Kakashi's mind. That Shukaku guy's state is a bit strange. He doesn't seem to be out of control. As both tailed beasts, they have a very special connection. As long as they are not too far apart, they can feel each other's aura point at this time. Uwe sensed Ichiwa's aura, but she felt a little strange. As a tailed beast, her temper is considered to be the best among tailed beasts, but even so, once she goes berserk, she will definitely cause more damage than she is now, not to mention a tail with a bad temper. If he was going on a normal rampage, he would just burst out chakra wildly and cause damage to the surroundings. But now, the second tail felt that, although the first tail also burst out with powerful chakra, he did not cause much damage. It was as if he was dealing with a powerful enemy. After hearing the speculation in Uwe's mind, Kakashi's expression changed slightly. For him, Gaara's identity is a bit complicated now. Although he is the son of the 4th Kazekage in the Jinchuriki of Sunagakure village, he is still the descendant of Mount Myaboku. Before he led people from Konoha village this time, Jiraiya had come to him once and asked him to pay attention to Gaara. If a war really breaks out between Konoha and Sunagakure, he must also ensure Gaara's safety. Safety point. Although Kakashi felt a little embarrassed about this, since Jiraiya had already spoken, he could not refuse and could only agree to him. But now that he encountered this situation, he felt a little speechless. However, in order to fulfill the agreement with Jiraiya, Kakashi decided to check the situation. If Gaara really encountered any danger, he would be there at the critical moment. Take action point. Kakashi then sped up and moved towards the direction of Ichibi at a very fast speed point. Although he set off a step later than Chiyo, he reached his destination before her. Who is this person? At this time, Kakashi was a little surprised. Looking at the white-haired boy with a big purple snake stepping on the field, a familiar figure flashed in Kakashi's heart. Could it be Orochimaru? Kakashi thought to himself. As one of the former Sennin of Konoha, Orochimaru's name has been widely spread in Konoha village, and he is also famous with his psychic beast, 10,000 snakes. Kakashi was lucky enough to have seen all snakes, so he recognized the big purple snake in front of him at a glance as all snakes through 10,000 snakes. Kakashi also confirmed the identity of the white-haired boy, who was Orochimaru point. Although his appearance was completely different from before, Kakashi thought he was Orochimaru point at this time. The battle between the two on the field was coming to an end. Coupled with Wanshi's impressive combat power, even though Orochimaru did not use his full strength, he still easily suppressed Ichibi. Orochimaru could have ended the battle early if it wasn't for the purpose of testing Ichibi's current strength. But at this time, he also felt a little bored. He had already seen clearly the current strength of Ichibi. Even when he was completely transformed into a tailed beast, he could only barely reach the shadow level. And it's also the weakest among them. In fact, Ichibi's own strength is stronger than this, but now he is sealed in Gaara's body. Even though his mind is connected with Gaara, because he is too young, his body has not fully developed, where his strength still cannot be fully utilized. Nowadays, it is normal for Orochimaru to be easily defeated. Swish. At this moment, an elderly figure flashed out and came to a place not far from Ichiyo. It was Chiyo. It can be seen that Chiyo's face was a little ugly at this time. She looked up at Orochimaru, who was standing above the heads of all snakes, with a trace of sullenness in her eyes, but more of helplessness. Old woman, hurry up and find a way to stop this guy. I'm going to bed, sir. Kazuo recognized Chiyo's identity and turned to face her and said, at this time, Ichibi has already seen that his defeat is certain. Even if he grits his teeth and persists, he will only destroy more buildings. So after Chiyo came here, he didn't want to continue fighting with Orochimaru. After saying this, Ichibi began to take back his chakra and returned control of his body to Gaara. Immediately, visible to the naked eye, his originally huge body began to shrink rapidly, until finally it completely returned to Gaara's appearance. Grandma Chiyo. Gaara shouted respectfully to Chiyo. Chiyo was pretty good to Gaara, at least he didn't have any strange emotions or eyes towards him, because of his identity as a Jinchuriki point. So I still trust Chiyo Gaara very much. Point boom. At this moment, a burst of white smoke suddenly appeared next to Gaara, and then what looked like some young frog shadows appeared there. Point after the smoke cleared, everyone saw clearly that it was a small toad with a white beard and eyebrows. Its Fukasaku Senin. At this moment, a dull voice sounded. It was Wanshi who was stepped on by Orochimaru and made a sound point. Although Wanshi is not very familiar with Myomu Mountain as one of the 3 holy places, he still knows Fukasaku Senin. Orochimaru, I have something else to do, so I won't play with you anymore. After saying these words, Wanshi automatically released his channeling and then turned into a burst of white smoke with a bang. Forehead. Orochimaru was a little surprised by this. A hint of thought flashed in his pale eyes, and then his eyes fell on Fukasaku Sage Point as an old comrade who has been with Wanshi for more than 10 years. Orochimaru has never seen him behave like this. It is obvious that the reason why Wanshi behaved like this just now is because he was afraid of the old toad in front of him. Byakugan. Did the Hyuga clan also sign a psychic contract with Ryuji Cave? Fukasaku Senin murmured, and he was not surprised at all by Wanshi's sudden departure. Even though they are both psychic beasts, they are still like natural enemies. Fukasaku Senin, who masters many kinds of celestial arts, can undoubtedly crush all snakes in terms of strength. It is understandable that the other party suddenly escapes. Just as Orochimaru was sizing him up, Fukasaku Senin also laid his eyes on him. Like Toad Grey before, Fukasaku Sage also thought that Orochimaru with the Byakugan was a member of the Hyuga clan. Chapter 285. Kakashi was shocked. Day's compromise. White eyes. How could he have white eyes? At this moment, Kakashi also noticed Orochimaru's pale pupils, and his expression changed instantly. Isn't he Orochimaru, but a member of the Hyuga clan? Kakashi thought this in his mind, but he soon shook his head. The Hyuga clan has strict rules. No one in their clan can leave without permission without the order of Hyuga Hisashi, the clan leader, or the Hokage of the village. What's more, Konoha village is now in the war preparation stage. As long as they are ninjas, everyone's whereabouts must be reported. There is also the big purple snake just now. Kakashi will not admit it wrong. That is Orochimaru's psychic beast. One snake point. If this person is really a member of the Hyuga clan, there are only 2 possibilities. The first is that the Hyuga clan has secretly colluded with Orochimaru behind the Leaf Village. The second is that this man is a traitor to the Hyuga clan, who was taken in by Orochimaru and became his subordinate. Either way, it's almost impossible to happen. The current Konoha village is monolithic under the leadership of Tsunade. It is impossible for the Hyuga clan to leave the wealthy Konoha clan alone and instead collude with Orochimaru, who is still a traitorous ninja. The second situation is almost impossible to exist. In the entire ninja world, the Hyuga clan has the most stringent control over their clan members. The clans are cold and ruthless in their divisions, in order to prevent their own clan's bloodline boundaries from being obtained by others. After ruling out all possibilities, Kakashi still couldn't figure out why this person had Byakugan. You must know that the Byakugan is not like the Sharingan, which can be used just by taking it off. In the Hyuga clan, except for a few members of the clan, everyone else will be prohibited from being caged. But whenever someone wants to capture the Byakugan, or when a person dies, the Byakugan will be automatically destroyed. That's why Kakashi felt so strange when he saw that this person had Byakugan. At this time, Fukasaku Senin seemed to have seen something. As a toad that had lived for hundreds of years, his knowledge was not comparable to that of ordinary people. At this time, he sensed a very strong energy in Orochimaru's body. Unusual smell. Master Fukasaku, At this moment, Gaara on the side turned to look at Fukasaku Senin. He was hesitant to speak, but seemed to want to say something else. Gaara, I almost forgot. I'm here to take you back to Mount Myomu. Fukasaku Sage, who was about to test it out, was reminded by Gaara's words. I will take Gaara to practice for a while first, and then I will send him back to Tsunagakure village. Fukasaku Sage said to Chiyo standing aside. Boom, boom. Then one person and one frog turned into a burst of white mist and dissipated at the same time. They used reverse channeling and returned directly to the psychic world. In fact, if Gaara mastered the channeling technique, he himself could also use reverse channeling to return to Mount Myomu. Haha, he was taken away. It doesn't matter. There will still be opportunities in the future. Orochimaru was not too angry about his test subject being taken away by Fukasaku Senin. In his opinion, the entire Tsunagakure village was about to be his. At that time, Ichibi Shukaku will not be at his mercy. As for Chiyo, after Gaara was successfully taken away, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Then she looked up at Orochimaru in front of her, and a plan arose in her heart. Then she simply adjusted her mood and spoke to the front with a little respect. Master. Orochimaru, Elder. Chiyo, you have already thought about it. Orochimaru saw Chiyo's behavior, and raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a sinister smile. He knew that Chiyo was showing weakness to him. Originally, he thought that Chiyo and the others would persist for a while, and he was even prepared to visit the Kazekage building every day, but he didn't expect that Chiyo would want to give up so quickly. Lord Orochimaru, please come to the Kazekage building to discuss matters. Chiyo's attitude was still very respectful. It is good. Orochimaru nodded lightly to this, and then he left here with Chiyo, and rushed towards the Kazekage building. But before leaving, Orochimaru turned his head and glanced to one side. There was nothing unusual in his eyes with blue veins, but there was a somewhat chaotic air. At this moment, in a hidden location not far from here, the originally stable space suddenly became turbulent, and then a figure appeared here. It was Kakashi. At this moment, his only exposed right eye was full of surprise. It's really Orochimaru. How come he has the Byakugan and that young body? Kakashi murmured in his mind. Just now he witnessed the conversation between Chiyo and Orochimaru, and confirmed Orochimaru's identity, but because he was too close to the two people, Kakashi was almost discovered. At this time, Kakashi was still obsessed with how Orochimaru could have Byakugan point. In addition to this incident, the contact between Tsunagakure village and Orochimaru also surprised him. Judging from their conversation just now, it is obvious that Orochimaru is not in contact with Tsunagakure village for the first time, and Chiyo's attitude towards him is also very strange. Although he is only an agent, Chiyo can now be regarded as the shadow of a village, representing the entire Tsunagakure village. Kakashi found it a bit strange that the dignified shadow of a village would be so respectful to a rebel ninja. Kakashi, who really couldn't figure it out, decided to return to the village first, report the matter about Orochimaru to Tsunade, and let her make a decision. Then Kakashi closed his eyes, and after a burst of space shock, his figure disappeared instantly. After he left completely, a black bone snake slowly emerged from the ground. Hiss. A horse snake came from its mouth in the Kazekage building. After Chiyo invited Orochimaru to the Kazekage office, he also had Ebizo called over. Lord Orochimaru, we can agree to your appointment as the 5th Kazekage, but there are a few conditions you must agree to us, Chiyo said to Orochimaru in a hoarse voice. Orochimaru seemed to have expected this, and there was no unexpected expression on his face. Chiyo, who had still vowed not to agree, suddenly changed her attitude, which in itself was very strange. Combined with the anomaly he just discovered, Orochimaru had some vague guesses in his mind at this time. On the field, after Chiyo and Ebizo looked at each other, Ebizo spoke. Now, the 5th Hokage of Konoha village wants to occupy Sand Hidden Village in Makus, the country of wind, a satellite of the country of fire. I hope you can help us get through this difficulty. That's the first condition. Chapter 286. My name is Kaguya Kimimaro. Sand Hidden Village, inside the Kazekage building. A flash of light flashed in Orochimaru's pale pupils. He did not expect that Konoha village would launch a war against Tsunagakure village. At Tsunade, it seems you have come out, he thought to himself. Orochimaru knew Tsunade very well as he was also a Sannin. During the Second Ninja War, Tsunade suffered from anemia and stayed away from Konoha because she could not bear the pain of losing her relatives one after another, and stayed away from the war. And now that Tsunade can take the initiative to face the war, Orochimaru knows that she has completely repaired the inner trauma. At this time, Orochimaru also realized one thing, that is, the ninja world was about to change. Today's Konoha village is at its peak. The name of White Fang's son, Yellow Fang's disciple, and Silver Fang's flash has already shocked the ninja world, as well as his extremely talented nephew. Orochimaru vaguely guessed what Tsunade's ultimate goal was. Haha, at Tsunade, it's not that easy to unify the ninja world, Orochimaru said in his heart. Since I want to become the 5th Kazekage of Tsunagakure village, I will naturally protect my own village. I will lead Sunagakure village to stop the attack of Konoha village. Orochimaru raised the corners of his mouth slightly and looked at him with a half smile. Sitting across from each other were Ibizo and Chiyo. He knew that these two people were only forced to agree to him because they could not stop the attack of Konoha village, but Orochimaru didn't care about this. No matter what the process was, he only cared about the result, as long as his goal was achieved. After seeing Orochimaru agree, Chiyo and the two secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Even if Orochimaru has his own selfish motives, as long as Sunagakure village can survive this difficulty point, as long as Gaara and the younger generation of the village grow up, Orochimaru will be able to abdicate in the future. The second condition is, Lord Orochimaru, you can succeed the 5th Kazekage, but in the future, the personnel of the 6th Kazekage must be determined by our Sunagakure village. Chiyo said to Orochimaru with a serious face. If Orochimaru does not agree to this condition, even if Konoha village is captured, she will not agree to Orochimaru's request. It is good. What surprised her was that Orochimaru nodded and agreed without any hesitation. Then he stood up and walked directly out of the office. Get ready and arrange the succession ceremony within 3 days. After saying these words, Orochimaru's figure disappeared from the office, leaving only Chiyo and 2 people with puzzled faces. Although they were confused, the 2 of them didn't think much about it in the end. After all, they didn't have many choices now. Since they had decided to agree to Orochimaru's request, they had no choice but to accept it. Then Grandma Chiyo once again invited all the senior officials of Sunagakure village over as the agent of Kazekage. Chiyo did not hide anything from them and directly told Orochimaru that he would succeed the 5th Kazekage. In response to this, the senior management of Sunagakure, without exception, all looked at Chiyo with shocked faces. Everyone present knew who Orochimaru was. He was one of the 3 former ninjas of Konoha village and now an S-class rebel ninja. A person of this status actually wanted to come to Sandhidden village to succeed the 5th Kazekage. At this time, everyone thought Chiyo was crazy. It was only Chiyo's next words that calmed them down. There is news from the border. It has been determined that Konoha village will launch a war against Sunagakure. Everyone knows that Sunagakure village is in an unprecedented period of weakness. Chiyo looked helpless at this time. If the war breaks out and nothing happens, it will only be a matter of time before Sunagakure village is defeated. By then, the entire kingdom of Wind will face a devastating disaster. By that time, how many people in the entire Sandhidden village will have lost their lives and freedom? Still, some of you can figure out a way to withstand the attack of Konoha village. Chiyo's words silenced everyone. Think about it from another angle. Now that Orochimaru wants to succeed the 5th Kazekage, it may be a good thing for us. Not only can we use him to resist the invasion of the Leaf Village, but once we push back the Leaf Village, we will have time to breathe. In the future, when the younger generation has fully grown up, it will be good to take back the position of Kazekage from Orochimaru. Under the persuasion of Chiyo and Ibizo, everyone finally agreed to let Orochimaru succeed the 5th Kazekage. In order to tie Orochimaru to Sunagakure village as soon as possible, they directly set the succession ceremony for tomorrow. It's just that Kazekage is the faith supporter of Sandhidden village after all. In order to better appease people's hearts, it is impossible for them to let Orochimaru sit in the position of Hokage under his real name. After discussion, they gave Orochimaru the identity of a distant relative of the 2nd Kazekage. Finally, Ibizo came to report the news to Orochimaru and asked him to give himself a new name. Orochimaru didn't care much about the fact that he suddenly became a distant relative of the 2nd Kazekage. It was just his identity, and he had noble pursuits and didn't care about it. But when Ibizo asked him to think of a new name, he hesitated slightly, and a flash of thought flashed in his pale pupils. Then Orochimaru walked to a mirror, looked at his young body and his pale pupils, and finally spoke after a long hesitation. My name is Kaguya Kimimaro. After getting Orochimaru's permission, Ibizo and Chiyo took action. Although the Kaguya clan is a family of Karigakure village, Kaguya is only a surname. Chiyo announced to the public that the person who will succeed the 5th Kazekage is a relative of the 2nd Kazekage named Kaguya Kimimaro. As for her surname, she does not spoken out point in this way. Everyone will subconsciously think that the 5th generation and the 2nd generation have the same surname and will not associate it with the Kaguya clan of Kirigakure village. The reason why Orochimaru used this name was because he felt a little indebted to Kimimaro. In the future, Kaguya Kimimaro's name will definitely resound throughout the ninja world and will be immortal. At the same time, Konoha village, Hokage's office. There were several figures in the office at this time. In addition to Tsunade sitting at the desk and Jiraiya standing behind her, there were 2 other people standing in front of Tsunade with long silver hair, a black mask, and a slender figure. This is Kakashi. As for the other person, he is the leader of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hizu. At this time, Hizu still looked shocked, because just now he learned from Kakashi that Orochimaru had a pair of Byakugan. This incident made him call it impossible. After Kakashi returned to Konoha from Tsunagakure village, he immediately reported the matter about Orochimaru to Tsunade. Then Tsunade asked someone to notify Rizu. Chapter 287. The ninja world must be unified. Inside the Hokage's office, not only Hizu was shocked, Tsunade and Jiraiya also felt a little incredible. Although they met Orochimaru, who had changed his body in the village not long ago, at that time they were at best a little surprised. After all, they also knew that Orochimaru was studying the art of reincarnation, but now he actually had a pair of white eyes. This makes people a little confused. The reason why Hizu was notified was that the Byakugan was, after all, the most important thing for their clan. Now that Orochimaru suddenly had a pair of Byakugan, he had to inform the Hyuga clan, otherwise it would easily arouse their suspicion. On the other hand, Tsunade also wants to know how Orochimaru got the Byakugan. After all, Hizu is the leader of the Hyuga clan. He obviously knows more about the Byakugan than anyone else. But it was obvious that Hizu was a little unbelievable at this time, and he couldn't figure out why Orochimaru had the Byakugan of his own clan. In recent decades, except for the Byakugan in Kirigakure village, no Byakugan in the Hyuga clan has been lost. After all, in the Hyuga clan, members of the clan are very rare. In Rizu's memory, there is no clan member who has disappeared or been killed inexplicably. As for the people who are separated, it is impossible for them to lose their Byakugan because they have caged birds on them. For a moment, Rizu also felt that his thoughts were a little messy. Seeing this situation, Tsunade could only let him go back first. Of course, Tsunade also said that the village would definitely protect the Hyuga clan, and if there was a moment, Byakugan would help them get it back. After Rizu left here, he returned directly to the clan point. After returning to the clan, Hizu dove directly into the temple in the clan, where he found the genealogy of the Hyuga clan, and began to carefully check the people on it. The Byakugan is the pride of the Hyuga clan. He must figure this out, otherwise it will be a huge shame to the Hyuga clan. After looking through nearly 50 years of genealogy lists, Rizu's eyes stopped on a person's name. Is it really him? Orochimaru actually colluded with Tsunagakure village. In this case, things may be a bit troublesome. Tsunade in the Hokage's office frowned. Her face gradually became serious, and a complicated look flashed deep in her eyes. She herself is fully confident about this operation against Tsunagakure village. Kakashi led 100 elites to struggle with Chiyo and others in Tsunagakure village, while the 5,000 ninjas led by Choza and others would press forward with an army and directly occupy the border of Tsunagakure village. By then, the pressure on both sides of Tsunagakure village will double, and surrender will only be a matter of time. But if Orochimaru had defected to Tsunagakure village, the situation might have changed dramatically. Not to mention Orochimaru's very powerful strength, even his strategy cannot be underestimated. Another point is that Orochimaru has mastered many forbidden techniques, including the technique of reincarnation of the dead that can summon the dead. Tsunade had already imagined the scene of those dead ancestors coming out to fight them. Oh, second grandfather, you just shot your granddaughter in the foot, Tsunade thought helplessly. After thinking carefully, she decided to first determine the relationship between Orochimaru and Tsunagakure village, and then take action. After thinking of this, Tsunade raised her head and said to Kakashi, "Temporarily let your team lurk around Tsunagakure village. First determine Orochimaru's purpose in Tsunagakure village, and then take action." The action needs to be suspended. Hearing this, Kakashi frowned. He felt a little pressured. It would be okay if he was the only one. The ninja world is so big that there is no way he can go. But now he is leading a team of hundreds of people, lurking near Sand Hidden Village. It is still difficult to avoid being discovered by Sand Hidden Village Point, but since Tsunade had given the order, he had no reason to refuse, and could only nod in agreement. Yes, Hokage-sama, then. He used the Flying Thunder God technique to return to Sand Hidden Village again. How can you grow without pressure, Kakashi? At this moment, Jiraiya, standing behind Tsunade, said. Perhaps it was because he heard the news about his former companions again. Jiraiya's expression was not very good at this time, and there was also a complicated look on his determined face. Tsunade, I want. Well, you go ahead. Late at night, a tall figure appeared in the direction of the entrance to Konoha Village Point. He had unruly long white hair, and through the faint moonlight you could see the red paint on his face. He was none other than Jiraiya. Jiraiya appeared at the entrance of the village without hesitation. Taking advantage of the darkness, he disappeared in a flashpoint. Since Tsunade succeeded as the 5th Hokage, Jiraiya rarely leaves the village. Every time he leaves the village, there is something important to do, and this time is no exception. Just after Jiraiya left, a figure slowly emerged from the ground and revealed a head. Uzumaki Naraku, Jiraiya, and Kakashi are not in the village. If we take this opportunity to deal with the 5th Hokage, if so, then Konoha Village will fall into chaos. A familiar murmur came from the man's mouth, and then the ground trembled. It's been a long time since I've been to the Thousand Hands Clan's clan. At the same time, in the Senju clan, Tsunade returned from the Hokage's office and walked into the room. After working for a long time, there was a trace of fatigue on her face, but her eyes revealed with a touch of perseverance. This time Tsunade has made up her mind. No one can stop her, not even Orochimaru. The ninja world must be unified. After a simple wash, Tsunade lay on the bed and rested. She still had many things to deal with tomorrow. Just when Tsunade had just fallen asleep, several figures appeared in a forest outside the clan. These figures were carved from the same mold, with exactly the same appearance, and they were all pale. They are all clones of Beisetsu. There are a huge number of white Zetsu clones spread throughout the ninja world. Even in Konoha Village, there are white Zetsu clones, so they also learned about Konoha Village's preparations to attack Tsunagakure Village. The life and death of Tsunagakure Village has nothing to do with them, but now that Tsunade has sent many strong men out, Beisetsu wants to test it out. Looking at the clan land in front of them, Beiju's clones were no stranger to it. They had been here many years ago. After a brief observation, several white Zetsu clones rushed towards the clan from 3 directions. They all used Earth Escape ninjutsu and were sneaking on the ground for fear that their whereabouts would be exposed. Chapter 288 Minato, you are about to be surpassed. Outside the Senju clan's clan, swish, swish, the 2 figures moved quickly and came together with a barb-like hairstyle and a black combat uniform. Even with the mask on, he could be recognized as the current Anbu minister of Konoha Village, Uchiha Shizu. And the person who had just joined him was none other than Itachi Uchiha. Before Jiraiya left the village, he notified Shizu and asked him to send more people to protect Tsunade. Shizu naturally attached great importance to Tsunade's safety. After Jiraiya said he was leaving the village, Shizu directly informed Itachi and asked him to secretly serve as a guard to protect Tsunade's safety. He even felt uneasy and rushed here after finishing the matters at hand, and together with Itachi, he acted as a guard to protect Tsunade. Shizu's approach was undoubtedly correct. Just now, they had eliminated several white Zetsu clones that wanted to sneak into the tribe's territory. Shizu looked at the scroll in his hand, his eyes lost in thought. The appearance of Beisetsu's clone made him realize that the Akatsuki organization, which had been hiding in the dark, was always paying attention to their movements. Now Jiraiya has just left the village, and someone is already trying to break into the Senju clan's territory. Shizu didn't dare to be careless at all, knowing that there was not only Tsunade in the clan at this time, but also Kushina and Naruto, the 2 nine-tailed Jinchuriki. They are all Akatsuki's targets. After a slight hesitation, Shizu decided to stay here with Itachi for one night, and then report the discovery of white Zetsu to Tsunade tomorrow. Uchiha Obito and the Akatsuki organization will never allow you to harm the Leaf Village, Shisu swore secretly in his heart. Although Itachi on the side was silent, his determined eyes spoke volumes. Today's Uchiha clan has finally gained Tsunade's trust and has gradually integrated into the village, so neither Shizu nor Itachi will let everything they finally gained disappear. Then Shizu's body flashed, and he circled outside the Senju clan's territory as quickly as possible, and then guarded the area with Itachi point within the clan. Minato, it looks like you're about to be surpassed, a slight murmur sounded. A few hours later, as the night slowly receded, a golden sun slowly rose from the east. Tsunade's figure also appeared outside the clan. Shizu, who noticed Tsunade's appearance, immediately told Tsunade about the appearance of the white Zetsu clone. White Zetsu clone, Akatsuki organization. Tsunade murmured. She was not too surprised by the appearance of the Akatsuki organization. She had learned from Naraku's mouth the ultimate goal of the Akatsuki organization: to collect tailed beasts and pursue true peace. Generally speaking, the Akatsuki organization's philosophy of pursuing peace is somewhat similar to her purpose, but it is impossible for the two to stand on the same front. The Akatsuki organization wants to collect tailed beasts, and Kushina, Naruto and even Kakashi will be their targets. Tsunade has long expected this day to come. To be on the safe side, Tsunade returned to her clan and informed Kushina about the emergence of the Akatsuki organization, asking both her and Naruto to pay attention. Kushina nodded at this. There were some things she knew very well. As the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, Kushina has been a much discussed existence since she was a child. Before she graduated from the ninja academy, a ninja from the Cloud Ninja village kidnapped her, so she has long been used to these things. As for Naruto, considering his age, Kushina and Tsunade did not tell him, but Tsunade once again sent additional personnel to secretly protect Naruto. Then Tsunade and Shizu returned to the Hokage's office, but before leaving, Shizu took out a wooden kunai and gave it to Naruto. You can see that there is a black warlock vaguely engraved on the kunai. After Tsunade saw this kunai, her pupils trembled slightly, but soon a smile appeared on her face. Kushina's expression did not change much, but after Tsunade and the others left, a touch of unnoticeable sadness appeared between her eyebrows, but she quickly hid it. Mom, today is my first time on a mission. Please cheer me on. At this moment, Naruto said as if shouting. Okay, cheers for you, but you must be careful when performing tasks, you know. I know. The Kingdom of Fire. Inside the damning mansion, Yushin looked up at the red-haired boy in front of him. He didn't expect that the other person actually did all this. Just yesterday, this young man suddenly appeared in front of him, told him that the daimyo was dead, and asked him if he would like to become the new daimyo. The young man is none other than Naraku. Amada didn't believe Naraku's words at all. Even after learning that it was the daimyo whom Naraku abducted, he only believed that Naraku was the enemy of the daimyo. At most, he would just imprison the daimyo and wait for ransom, because the daimyo is the apparent supreme leader of a country, and he controls the wealth of the entire country. Even if he is as powerful as Konoha village, he will sometimes be constrained by the daimyo in terms of funds. It is precisely because the daimyo controls the wealth of a country that some gangsters or wandering ninjas often kidnap him and demand ransom. Amada has seen wandering ninjas kidnapping daimyo more than once. So he directly regarded Naraku as that type of person. It's just that after Naraku showed him the daimyo's body, he was instantly shocked by this point of view. He believed what Naraku said in his heart, and after careful consideration, Amada nodded and agreed to Naraku, expressing his desire to become a daimyo. After all, a soldier who doesn't want to be a general is not a good soldier. As a qualified daimyo assistant, he also has his own ambitions. Just after nodding to Naraku, Amada felt a sense of fear. You must know that the position of daimyo is hereditary. Although the current daimyo was killed by him, the daimyo still had younger brothers and his own descendants. No matter how hard it is, it won't be his turn. Also, if the daimyo's family finds out that he has the ambition to become a daimyo, not only him, but also his family will die. In this way, Yushin spent the night in fear, but after dawn, his fear completely disappeared. the daimyo's wife, the daimyo's mother, the daimyo's younger brother, and other relatives of the daimyo all came to his residence early in the morning, knelt down and worshipped him without suicide saying a word, and handed him the suicide note left by the daimyo. The note states that after the daimyo dies, the daimyo will be handed over to his assistant, Amada. For a moment, Amada was shocked and speechless. Then, under the leadership of the Daming family, he came to the Daming mansion and met Naraku. Chapter 289 Succession Ceremony successfully held. My lord, you. At this time, Amada was extremely respectful when facing Naraku, and even had a hint of fear. He didn't know who Naraku was, and what he was doing here. Amada was awake, and he was not dazzled by the sudden power. He knew very well that the reason why the daimyo's family respected him so much now was because of the red-haired boy in front of him. Facing Amada's inquiry, Naraku did not speak, but just cast his eyes on those people behind Amada. In an instant, these people understood what Naraku meant, and turned around, and walked outside the house. When only Naraku were left in the room, Naraku turned his head, and focused his gaze on Amada, and then an invisible aura was released from him. Boom. In an instant, this momentum fell on Amada, but as an ordinary person, he couldn't resist the pressure of Naraku's momentum. He couldn't hold on for even a second, and collapsed on the ground. I am the younger brother of the 5th Hokage, Uzumaki Naraku. Until then, Naraku spoke slowly, his cold tone without any emotion, as for why I came here, and why I wanted to kill the daimyo. You should know the reason. Suppressed by Naraku's momentum, he could only gasp and try to speak. Upon seeing this, Naraku withdrew his aura, and Amada suddenly felt a lightness on his body. After quickly adjusting his breathing, he knelt directly in front of Naraku and lowered his head. Naraku-sama, I'm absolutely loyal to Hokage-sama and to you. In the future, I will ask Hokage-sama for instructions on any affairs in the country of fire. I will unconditionally carry out any orders from Hokage-sama. As the assistant of the daimyo, Amada is an extremely smart person. The moment Naraku revealed his identity, he had already thought of why Naraku killed the daimyo, and then found him. What's more, he personally wrote a document for the daimyo a few days ago, which was a letter of dismissal from the position of Tsunade Hokage. That's why he reacted so quickly. At this time, he only felt a sense of fear in his heart. If he had shown a little bit of respect for the daimyo when he saw Naraku yesterday, maybe he would have finished his journey to hell by now. After seeing Yusha and recognize this, Naraku also nodded secretly. Yumei was discovered by someone Naraku in daimyo's memory. He valued the other person's ability to handle affairs. The reason why Amada became the daimyo's assistant was because of his outstanding ability, and now he is valued again because of his outstanding ability. Naraku knew that the reason why Tsunade sent him here this time was to hope that he could completely solve the daimyo's troubles at once, because there were still many tough battles to be fought in Konoha village, and she didn't want to have to fight them again. Distraction to deal with the daimyo. That's why Naraku decided to kill the daimyo directly this time. Although killing the daimyo would leave some clues, Naraku didn't care. In his opinion, although he doesn't know what the future will be like, the current ninja world is a place where fists speak. But it is obvious that the daimyo may not realize this, so he angered Tsunade and eventually died tragically. Before killing the daimyo, Naraku used illusion to read part of his memory. He discovered Amada and took a fancy to him, so this scene happened now. And what Amada said just now also proved that Naraku did not make the wrong choice. Next, Naraku spent another half day completely cleaning up the daimyo's old department. As for the daimyo's close relatives, Naraku let them go. After all, they are just ordinary people. The reason why the daimyo's family has such a high status is simply because the first Hokage chose someone from their family to be the daimyo of the fire country. In fact, before the 3rd generation, the daimyo had always been in awe of the Hokage. It was only since the 3rd generation took office that he began to take the initiative to get close to the daimyo in order to guard against Danzo secretly wooing the daimyo. The actions of the 3rd generation also made the daimyo swell. Until now, he even has the power to depose a Hokage. Power makes people intoxicated and makes them unable to see themselves clearly. After helping Amada become the daimyo, Naraku also found a trustworthy guard for him. It was Chiraku, who was released by Naraku before, and was one of the 12 guardian ninjas. When Naraku saw him, he directly showed him the daimyo's dismissal letter. Naraku believed that he would be on his side. The facts were just as Naraku expected. After he made it clear to Chiraku that this was Tsunade's wish, Chiraku became Amada's guard. As for the remaining 12 guardian ninja, Kazuma eventually died at the hands of Naraku's shadow clone. The other 6 were all money-grubbing people. After Amada promised to give them some benefits, he took them under his wing. Later, with the support of everyone in the daimyo family, Yushin legitimately took the position of daimyo of the Fire Country. For this, all the prominent figures in the Fire Country came over to celebrate. Most of them are businessmen. Naraku, who had no interest in this, left the daimyo mansion. Although the daimyo problem was solved, he was not ready to return to Konoha village at this time. He wanted to go to Sunagakure village to see that Kakashi and the others had completed their mission. How's it going? It was only when Naraku arrived at the border of the Land of Fire that he stopped. Haha, we are finally here, in Sand Hidden Village. A wide square looked extremely lively. The square was full of people, and there were dozens of ninjas just maintaining order. This is the first time such a lively scene has occurred in Sunagakure village since the 4th Kazekage died unexpectedly. But for Sunagakure village, this day is indeed worth celebrating. Because what is being held here today is a succession ceremony of the 5th Kazekage of Sunagakure village. Although most people in Sunagakure village did not know who Kaguya, Kimimaro, a relative of the 2nd Kazekage and the 5th Kazekage, was, this did not prevent them from being happy. The new 5th Kazekage took office, which was a kind of spiritual comfort for the Sunagakure people who had just lost their spiritual leader. Because of this, they would not feel repulsed by a stranger becoming the 5th Kazekage. On a high platform in the center of the square, Chiyo and Abizo led several senior officials of Sunagakure village to stand here. These people basically know the real truth, so they cannot be as happy as those in the audience, but in order not to arouse suspicion, they still have a unified smile on their faces. It can also be said to be a fake smile. It's just that at this moment, no one cares about these details. At this time, everyone's eyes are focused on the young white-haired figure on the high platform. It was none other than their 5th Kazekage, Kaguya Kimimaro. In this way, the succession ceremony was successfully held in the hope of everyone in Sunagakure village. Chapter 290, The Perfect Filthy Soil Reincarnation Sacrifice. In Sunagakure village, just after Orochimaru successfully held the succession ceremony, the villagers surrounding the square gradually dispersed, and Orochimaru, the 5th Kazekage, took Chiyo and Sunagakure village. The higher-ups arrived at the Kazekage building. The architectural style of the Kazekage building is similar to that of the Hokage building in Konoha village. The top floor is the Kazekage office, and the first floor is a very empty meeting hall. Generally, if important events occur in the village's senior officials will be summoned here to discuss matters. At this time, there were more than a dozen figures here, and the leader was Chiyo. At this time, they were all kneeling respectfully in front of one person, with long white hair and red cinnabar between his eyebrows. He is Orochimaru. Looking at the senior Sunagakure kneeling in front of him, Orochimaru raised the corners of his mouth slightly and smiled. Although he knew that the main reason why these people agreed to his appointment as the 5th Hokage was because Konoha village wanted to launch a war against Sunagakure. But Orochimaru doesn't care about this. Now that he has become the 5th Kazekage, it is only a matter of time before he actually controls Sunagakure village. Everyone, get up, Orochimaru spoke, signaling Chiyo and the others to stand up. Elder Chiyo, how far is the war between Konohagakure and Sunagakure in Konohagakure now? Orochimaru said slowly. Since Orochimaru chose to become the 5th Kazekage of Sunagakure village, he will naturally do his best to protect Sunagakure village. After all, Sunagakure village will be his own from now on. And Orochimaru also wanted to see how powerful Konoha village is now, and how far Naraku and the others have grown. The Konoha village has secretly assembled 5,000 ninjas, and is rushing to the border of the country of fire. Tomorrow morning at the latest, they will arrive at the border of the country of wind. By then, the border may be in danger. Faced with Orochimaru's inquiry, Chiyo naturally would not hide anything, and told all the information she already knew. In fact, before this, Chiyo had always been a little worried. He was worried that Orochimaru would break the agreement and ignore Konoha village as soon as he took the position of Kazekage, but now it seems that she was overly worried. In fact, the reason why Orochimaru intervened in Konoha village's attack on Tsunagakure village from the beginning had another purpose. That is, he wanted to get the people of Tsunagakure village to accept him faster. Although most people in Tsunagakure village seem to accept him now, Orochimaru knows that this is only on the surface, and there is still some rejection of him in their hearts, although Orochimaru doesn't really care about their opinions. If he wants to completely build Tsunagakure village into his own power, he must gain their trust point. Therefore, the fact that Konoha village is going to launch a war this time is also an opportunity for him. If he can successfully repel Konoha village and protect Tsunagakure, it will undoubtedly greatly enhance his prestige in the village. This will be of great help for him to completely control Sand Hidden village, Konoha village. It seems that an interesting war is about to begin. A gleam flashed in his pale eyes, then he asked Chiyo and the others about other affairs of Tsunagakure village. It was not until night gradually fell that everyone walked out of the building with tired faces and went home. Orochimaru was the last one to walk out of the building. Compared to the fatigue of others, he still looked energetic at this time. If Orochimaru didn't have such a cold aura around him now, he would really look like a young man at this moment. If someone is proficient in sensory type ninjutsu, they will find that Orochimaru's vitality is so strong today that even a man in his prime is completely unmatched by him. In fact, this is all thanks to that one, the ninjutsu created by Orochimaru through reincarnation, the killing hand. This ninjutsu that can steal the life force of others perfectly overcomes Orochimaru's original weakness. The mental power that was originally damaged by using the technique of immortal reincarnation has long been restored, even better than before. After leaving the Kazekage building, Orochimaru came to the back of Tsunagakure village. This place is remote and few people live here. Orochimaru chose this place for this reason. As before, he also built an underground research laboratory here. Under the ground, although it was already dark outside, the lights here were bright. In terms of environment, it looked much better than the previous dark research room. After arriving here, Orochimaru walked straight to the innermost room, where two figures were studying something around a table. Boom. But just after Orochimaru stepped into the room, one of the figures turned into a puff of white smoke and disappeared with a bang. Lord Orochimaru, you are back. And another figure turned his head and said respectfully without any surprise. A memory appeared in Orochimaru's mind, and it was his shadow clone that just turned into white smoke and disappeared. The clone of Beiju actually has an independent life form, and the cells in it have very similar abilities to the original cells. After completely accepting the memory of the shadow clone, Orochimaru raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a playful smile. In this case, it's really very interesting, Orochimaru murmured in a low voice, and his eyes fell on the figure on the table. At this time, it can be seen that this figure is a creature composed entirely of white cells, which is Beiju's clone. Orochimaru had been very curious about White Zetsu before, but he didn't do anything to him because he was afraid of Obito and Pain's abilities, but now Orochimaru is no longer afraid of them. So when he met the White Zetsu clone before, he captured it in order to study it carefully. The facts did not disappoint him. The Beiju clone was very strange. Although it was a clone, it seemed to have an independent life and would not dissipate as easily as the shadow clone. Orochimaru has done experiments and found that even if the White Zetsu clone is cut into pieces, its body will still not dissipate and will even slowly heal together, and its consciousness will recover. This discovery made Orochimaru completely interested, which can be seen from the large and small pinholes and knife edges on the White Zetsu clone on the table. Looking at the White Zetsu clone on the table, Orochimaru's eyes flashed, and he thought of how to use the White Zetsu clone to its maximum effect. The perfect filthy soil reincarnation sacrifice, Orochimaru thought secretly in his heart, and then his figure flashed, and when he reappeared, he was already above the ground. Let me see how many White Zetsu clones are lurking in Tsunagakure village. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291, Tsunade's Determination. It seems that Orochimaru-sama has made a new discovery. Kabuto from the underground laboratory sighed after seeing Orochimaru suddenly disappearing. At the same time, a trace of fire flashed in his eyes. Kabuto then looked around, and when no one was around, he took some cells from Beijufan's body on the table and kept them secretly. Although Kabuto is still unable to figure out the value of the white Zetsu clone, he knows that, as long as it is something that Orochimaru-sama likes, it is definitely of high value. Then Kabuto once again entered into selfless research. On the other side, Orochimaru was moving rapidly at this time. It could be seen from the meridian surrounding his eyes that he had opened his Byakugan. With his white eyes open, he kept looking around. After a while, he seemed to find something, and his figure flashed in a remote corner. Then he raised his hands and began to form seals quickly, and then you could see Orochimaru's body slowly falling towards the ground. A minute later, his figure appeared on the ground again, and he was holding a pale body in his hand, which was Beiju's clone. Then Orochimaru stretched out his hand and threw the clone into a black hole on his left. Then there was a fierce chewing sound, and the next moment, a huge figure appeared in front of Orochimaru with its body crawling. This is a huge black bone snake. At this time, the belly of the bone snake is raised high, as if something is struggling inside. The 5 clones should be almost there, Orochimaru thought in his mind, and stood on the head of the black bone snake, and then one man and one snake rushed towards the back of Tsunagakure. At this time, in Orochimaru's eyes, the white Zetsu clone is the best sacrifice for the reincarnation of the dirty land. His special body is even stronger than the physique of some Jounin. Orochimaru himself was already preparing to use Earth reincarnation to deal with Naraku, Kakashi and the others. Although his strength has improved a lot now, there are many masters in Konoha village, and there are more than one hand of shadow level experts. He is not sure that he alone can compete with Konoha. Therefore, if you want to resist the attack of Konoha village and defend Tsunagakure village, you can only rely on the reincarnation of the dirty earth. Orochimaru himself just wanted to select a few of the death row inmates held in Tsunagakure village prisoner sacrifices, but now he had a better choice. There is no comparison between those death row prisoners and Beiju clones. Orochimaru then returned to the underground research room and started the experiment directly. Konoha village, Hokage's office. Although it was already late at night, Tsunade was still dealing with matters in the office, and standing in front of him was Kakashi, who had returned to Tsunagakure village. Orochimaru turned out to be the 5th Kazekage, Tsunade said with a look of disbelief on her face. Kakashi came back this time to report to Tsunade that Orochimaru succeeded the 5th Kazekage in Tsunagakure village today. No matter which village they are in, they attach great importance to the succession ceremony of each generation of Kage, and Tsunagakure village is no exception. However, it is precisely because of this that Kakashi did not spend much effort, and he easily found out about Orochimaru. The matter of succeeding the 5th Kazekage. Although Orochimaru was the Kazekage who succeeded Kaguya Kimimaro, Kakashi confirmed from other aspects that it was the Kazekage who succeeded Orochimaru. Like Tsunade, when he first confirmed the news, he couldn't believe that Tsunagakure village, one of the 5 great ninja villages, would let rebellious ninjas from other villages take over. This is simply ridiculous. However, at this time, Tsunade could somewhat understand Tsunagakure village's approach. Today, Tsunagakure village does not have any Kage level experts. There is no doubt that he is the weakest specimen among the 5 great ninja villages. If it hadn't been for the protection of Konoha village, Yun Ninja village and Iwa Ninja village might have taken action long ago. Under such circumstances, it is understandable that Tsunagakure would do such a thing in order to save Tsunagakure. After learning that Konoha, the strongest among the 5 great ninja villages, was going to launch a war against them, Tsunade could still figure out what Tsunagakure village was doing. She just wanted to find someone to protect Tsunagakure village and let them survive this crisis. But Orochimaru's behavior made Tsunade a little confused. She didn't understand why Orochimaru, who had been lax since he defected from the village, agreed to serve as the 5th Kazekage. If it was for power, Orochimaru would not have surrendered to the 3rd generation and chose to defect from the Leaf Village. If it's not power, then what is it? Tsunade, who really couldn't figure it out, shook her head slightly. She reached out and rubbed her swollen forehead, then raised her head and cast her eyes on Kakashi. A look of determination appeared on Tsunade's face, and a sharp light flashed in her eyes. Orochimaru is the S-class rebellious ninja of the village. Even though he has now become the 5th Kazekage of Sunagakure village, he is still a rebellious ninja. Jiraiya has gone to support you. Let's start taking action tomorrow, Kakashi. First deal with Orochimaru, and then execute the rest according to the previous plan, Tsunade said slowly. There was a hint of determination in his slightly trembling tone. Jiraiya-sama has already set off, Kakashi secretly said in his mouth, and then bowed respectfully to Tsunade. Yes, Hokage-sama, I will never let Orochimaru hinder the development of the village. When he said this, Kakashi's eyes also flashed with a sharp light, and then a wave of enthusiasm emerged. Kakashi was still very curious about Orochimaru, one of the 3 ninjas. At the same time, he also wanted to see how far Orochimaru could develop the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. Then he left the Hokage's office and returned to the outside of Sunagakure village. Orochimaru, you can't stop me. Tsunade stood up and walked to the window in the office. She looked out the window with determined eyes, and an irresistible edge burst out from her body. For Tsunade, the idea of unifying the ninja world is unchangeable. In the future, she does not want her descendants and the villagers to suffer the same cruel wars as before. Go and invite the heads of the Uchiha and Hyuga clans. There is something you need to inform them about. After adjusting her emotions slightly, Tsunade turned to the darkness and said, soon, in less than 10 minutes, Fugaku and Hizu arrived here almost at the same time. Tsunade then held a long discussion with them, until later. Narashikaku also joined in, and they discussed until dawn, before deciding on the next action. In the early morning, just as the sun was just rising in the east, Hayashi and Fugaku left the Hokage's office and headed towards the clan territory. When they returned to their tribe, they did the same thing, which was to summon members of the tribe. Of course, they only summoned ninjas. Chapter 290 to the Compromising Elder. Kirigakure village, inside the Mizukage building. At this time, Meditarumi, who was sitting in the front seat, had a frosty look on her face, and there seemed to be a burst of anger in her heart at any time. What? Alliance, true peace, Konoha. Village just wants to unify the ninja world now. Only you, the 5th generation, who are young and have little experience, will choose to believe them. On the field, an old man with white hair and a cane in his hand was saying something loudly. It was not difficult to hear that there was a reprimand in his tone. The old man's name is Hojo-shun, and he is the leader of the Hojo clan in Kirigakure village. After the death of the 4th Mizukage, the Goju clan announced its disbandment within a few days. Then all the clan members left Kirigakure village and went to make a living elsewhere. In fact, if it weren't for Terumi Mena's secret care, not even one of the Goju clan would be able to leave Kirigakure village. You must know that the 4th Mizukage has offended almost all the big and small families in Kirigakure village. According to their wishes, the Goju clan must be eradicated. Among them, Toshi Hojo had the most extreme ideas, and it was precisely because Meditarumi protected the Goju clan that she offended the other party and started to oppose her intentionally or unintentionally. Just like this time, Terumi Medi had already negotiated with Tsunade and the others. When Konoha village began to launch operations against Sunagakure village, Kirigakure village also sent troops to the border of water country. There, it served as a deterrent to the Cloud Ninja village in the Land of Thunder, to prevent Konoha village from falling into a passive situation of being besieged by 3 parties. Terumi Medi issued an order the day after returning to Kirigakure village. As agreed, he summoned people to go to the border of the Kingdom of Water. But at this moment, the damn old man Hojo-shun jumped out. If it weren't for the fact that the Hojo clan had helped her when she succeeded the 5th Mizukage, Terumi Medi would never have tolerated this old guy's temper. Facing Hojo-chan's obstruction, Terumi Medi also thought about giving in. She ordered to gather half of the ninjas in the village, led by AO, and head to the border first. If there is any unusual movement in Young Ninja Village, she will lead the remaining forces in the village to the border. But what she didn't expect was that not only did Hojo-jun not agree with her approach, he even summoned all the elders of Kirigakure village to hold a condemnation meeting for her. Terumi Mei, who was sitting in the main seat, looked increasingly grim. You should give up the alliance with Konoha village as soon as possible. Kirigakure village has a superior terrain. Even if it does not need the help of other ninja villages, it can still gain a foothold in the ninja world. Hojo-shun seemed not to notice Terumi Mei's growing ugliness. The expression on his face is the same point. He still spoke aggressively and even said a harsh word at the end. Don't forget how you got your position as Mizukage. If, boom, at this moment, before Toshi Hojo finished speaking, a violent momentum rose in the room. Click. The next moment, the desk in front of Terumi Mei cracked directly in the middle, and then Terumi Mei stood up slowly, a white face full of anger. She turned to look at Hojo-jun and said slowly, if anything, Elder Hojo wants to say that, if I disobey your order, you will remove me, the fifth Mizukage. As she spoke, an even more violent aura burst out from her body, and visible to the naked eye, the originally calm air around her began to fluctuate like a tide. Terumi Mei stared at Hojo-jun with cold eyes. Everyone else on the field was also shocked by this scene. Some people who were about to echo Hojo-shun immediately shut their mouths tightly. They were very glad that they had not spoken just now. At this time, Hojo-jun was even more miserable. You could see that his face was ugly at this time, and there were dense beads of sweat on his forehead. Even though he wanted to admit weakness now, he couldn't open his mouth. When he was young, he barely reached the level of Jounin. He couldn't withstand the pressure of Terumi Mei's momentum. What's more, Terumi Mei deliberately directed her aura towards him. Terumi Mei just stared at the other party, her aura keeping suppressing him. When the time was almost right, Terumi Mei slowly withdrew her aura. Haha. After no longer being oppressed by momentum, Hojo Toshii recovered. At this time, he was panting heavily, with sweat falling beads from his forehead like water drops. Not only him, but everyone else in the house also breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, they all realized one thing. Today, Terumi Mei is not only the fifth Mizukage, but also the top leader of Kirigakure village. He is also the strongest person in Kirigakure village, a veritable cage-level powerhouse. Even without their support, Terumi Mei could still sit on the Mizukage position safely. Like everyone else, Hojo-shun was also shocked by Terumi Mei. At this time, he no longer had the arrogance he had just now, and he even dared not raise his head to look directly at Terumi Mei. What? Elder Hojo has nothing to say now. At this moment, Terumi Mei's voice sounded on the field. Hojo-jun trembled slightly when he heard the voice, and then shook his head repeatedly without raising his head. At this time, Hojo-jun's behavior was completely different from that of him just now. Now that Elder Hojo has nothing to say, what about the other elders? Do you have anything else to say? Terumi Mei narrowed her eyes slightly and scanned the audience. No one dared to look at him. In the end, all the elders compromised, and no one dared to express any objections. Since the elders have nothing to say, I have to gather people and rush to the border. Do the elders have anything to give you? After a brief silence, someone stood up and said slowly, Mizukage-sama, the border of the Kingdom of Water is dangerous and easy to defend, but difficult to attack. I suggest you lead the ninja army to station at the border. If it is not necessary, try not to let the large army across the border. Although Konoha village has started a war with Sunagakure village, we should not take action first before Kumo Ninja village expresses its intention to go to war. After hearing this, Terumi Mei nodded slowly. She also knew in her heart that the current Kirigakure village had just undergone a round of reshuffles. With everything waiting to be done, the overall strength of Kirigakure village was only slightly higher than that of Sunagakure village. Just strong. There is still a big gap compared with Young Ninja village, which is known as the strongest military force. Fortunately, Terumi Mei didn't want to initiate a war this time. The mission of Kirigakure village only needed to scare the Kumo Ninja and make them have some concerns and not dare to rashly participate in the war between Konoha and Sunagakure. Of course, this also involves great risks. If the Cloud Ninja village does not attack Konoha and instead attacks the Kirigakure village, the situation will not be good. However, Terumi may also consider this. Chapter 293 Inoki's Arrangements. Kirigakure village, inside the Mizukage building. After a brief discussion with everyone, Terumi Mei left here. The elders headed by Hojo-jun looked at Terumi Mei's leaving figure, and at this time they had mixed feelings in their hearts. By now, they have also realized one thing. The situation in Kirigakure village and even the entire ninja world is about to change dramatically. If they make some wrong decisions at this time, they may be kicked out. Hojo-jun left the Mizukage building with a gloomy expression. After thinking about it at home for a long time, he made an astonishing move. He proposed to Terumi to withdraw from the elders and hand over all the power in his hands to Mizukage. At first, the other elders in the village were very puzzled by Hojo-jun's behavior, and some even thought that he was just scared out of his wits by Terumi. But it was not until later that they understood how wise Hojo-jun's current actions were. Village entrance, because Terumi Mei had ordered the gathering of troops in advance. 2,000 ninjas soon appeared at the entrance of the village. Compared with the powerful Konoha village, Kirigakure village is inferior in both top and mid-level combat power. Except for the ninjas performing tasks outside, Terumi Mei can only call on tens of thousands of ninjas at most. However, because there are still people guarding the village, it is impossible for her to transfer all the ninjas out of the village. These 2,000 ninjas were dispatched as a vanguard force, and Terumi Mei could only call on about 5,000 ninjas at most. Although there are not many ninjas, Terumi Mei feels that there should be no problem. After all, they are not going to war with Kumo Ninja Village, they are just trying to put pressure on them from the side. Then, under the leadership of Terumi Mei, 2,000 ninjas set off in a mighty manner. Meanwhile, in the land of Earth, that Tsuchikage office, Inoki, who was sitting in the main seat, looked heavy. Although he didn't say a word, everyone on the field felt a strong sense of oppression. At this time, there were all Inoki's cronies in the office, including his disciples Akatsuchi, Kuratsuchi, and his son Huang. Just now, Inoki, who had just returned from the land of fire, learned the news that Konoha village had launched a war against Tsunagakure village. Originally, if there had not been this action from the country of fire, Inoki would only be happy after learning the news, because he could take advantage of the war between the two countries to send troops to Konoha village, seize resources, and occupy the land. But now Inoki hesitated. He thought of the red-haired boy and the nearly 100-meter tall golden Susan. In the hands of a strong man of that level, the ninja's numerical advantage disappeared. If we act rashly, Iwa Ninja village may be involved in the war, but if Inoki was allowed to give up easily like this, he would not be willing to do so, because he was also aware of the ambition of Konoha village. In terms of strength, Konoha village is the leader of the 5 villages. Although the military power of Cloud Ninja village is the most powerful, its high-end combat power cannot be compared with Konoha. If Konoha, which is already powerful, annexes Tsunagakure village, their strength will undoubtedly increase a lot again. Inoki doesn't think that Konoha village, which has strong strength, will stop there. He knew in his heart that Sand Hidden village was just the beginning, and it might be the turn of the Kumo Ninja or the Iwa Ninja next. As for Kirigakure village, which has become an ally with Konoha village will not give up in the future. Unifying the entire ninja world is the ultimate goal of Konoha village. So Inoki couldn't just sit back and wait for all this to happen. His eyes gradually became determined. Earth Ninja, Iwa Ninja village was originally founded by his grandfather, the first Tsuchikage, Ishikawa. Therefore, it is impossible for Inoki to hand over the country built by his ancestors to others. Send someone to contact the Raikage immediately. I want to meet with him in person, Inoki said in a deep voice. Several people who heard this sentence were a little surprised. They must know that during the Third Ninja War, their Iwa Ninja village dragged the 3rd Raikage of Kumo Ninja to death. The 4th Raikage is now his son. Huang and others do not think that the other party will sit at the same table with Inoki and chat calmly. But since Inoki had already given the order, they naturally did not dare to disobey it, and immediately sent people to the Kingdom of Thunder. to notify the Cloud Ninja Village. Then Inoki issued several orders one after another, including asking Huang to gather all the ninjas in the village, and ordering the ninjas who were on missions to complete their missions and return to the village as soon as possible. After receiving the order, Huang and others quickly carried out the order. At this time, they also noticed something abnormal. The war is coming again. Huang whispered in his mouth, with a complicated look in his eyes. It was obvious that he also hated war, but he also knew that there was nothing he could do about it, and some decisions he could not change. Not long after Huang walked out of that Tsuchikage building, two figures appeared at the same time and came to that Tsuchikage office together. One of them had long red hair, an armor on his head, and a red beard on his face. The other person is a man wearing a hat on his head and a mask on his face. These two people are the Jinchuriki of Iwa Ninja Village, the four-tailed Jinchuriki Laozi and the five-tailed Jinchuriki Han, Lord Tsuchikage. The two of them saluted Oneji respectfully. Inoki waved his hand slightly at this, and then told them that Konoha Village was about to launch a war against Tsunagakure Village. Almost instantly, Laozi and the other two understood what Inoki meant. For ordinary people, war is cruel, but for the Jinchuriki, war is undoubtedly more cruel and colder. Like Tsunagakure Village, the Jinchuriki of Iwa Ninja Village are also to be used as war machines. Although it sounds a bit sad, it is the reality. Laozi and Han looked at each other, and then both said firmly, everything follows Tsuchikage-sama's command. For them, all this has become natural. They have been implanted with tailed beasts since childhood. They know their mission very well, and they have always done so. Inoki was very satisfied with the attitude of the two people, and then he arranged for someone to take them to a secret location. The Jinchuriki were to be used as secret weapons, and Inoki would not expose them prematurely. Regarding the encounter between the two of them, Inoki also flashed a hint of sympathy in his heart, but that was all. Although he was very strong, he did not have the strength to change the fate of the two of them. Peace. Where is the true peace? After settling the matter between Laozi and Han, Inoki came to a secret corner of the village alone. This was a deserted area, and he ordered that no one be allowed to approach. Chapter 294. We must speed up. Inside the Iwa Ninja Village, Inoki stepped into the ruins. He walked straight to the deepest part of the ruins, where there was a prison-like room. Tsuchikage-sama has another mission to send to our Akatsuki organization. Suddenly, a familiar laughter sounded, and then a pale figure slowly emerged from the ground. It was Beiju's clone. But unlike other clones, this Beiju clone was wrapped with several specially made chains. One end of the chain penetrated his body, and the other end was locked on the surrounding walls. In fact, among the 5 major ninja villages, the first to know about the existence of the organization was not the Konoha village, but the Iwa Ninja Village. Iwa Ninja Village has been in contact with the Akatsuki organization a long time ago, and even sent some tasks to them. The white Zetsu clone in front of him was used by both parties to convey messages. The reason why the white Zetsu clone was locked here was because Inoki wanted to facilitate his contact with the Akatsuki organization. I hope the Akatsuki organization can help me assassinate someone this time. Inoki, who saw the white Zetsu clone, got straight to the point and said directly, "Let me see who actually needs our Akatsuki organization to take action," Beiju said with a smile on his face. Konoha Village, Uzumaki Naraku. The Beizetsu clone was stunned when he heard the name. He didn't expect Inoki to ask them to assassinate Naraku. At this time, he understood Inoki's true intention. The assassination of Naraku was just a cover. His real purpose was to seize Konoha Village. The corner of Beizetsu's lips raised. He looked at Inoki with a smile, and then said, "Uzumaki Naraku, a rising star in Konoha Village, whose talent is not weaker than that of the 4th Hokage Kakashi, although he is very powerful and highly valued by the Leaf Village. Since Lord Tsuchikage has issued an order, our Akatsuki organization must go all out to execute it. Lord Tsuchikage, just wait for our good news." The reason why the white Zetsu clone agreed to Inoki's request so easily is because Naraku Uzumaki is also their enemy, and Kyuubi is in Konoha Village, so it won't be long before they launch an attack on Konoha, and then both sides will die. That's what I live for. Also, Nagato has already rushed towards Konoha Village, and there will inevitably be a battle with Naraku. In this way, he can easily deal with Inoki. What are the conditions? At this moment, Inoki's voice sounded. Inoki has cooperated with the Akatsuki organization many times and is very clear about their rules. I want to inquire about some news from you, Lord Tsuchikage. His eyes fell on Inoki, and there was always a smile on the mouth of the white Zetsu clone, who, the seven-tailed Jinchuriki. After a long time, Inoki stepped out of the ruins and returned to the Tsuchikage building again. Jinchuriki, is your target the tailed beast? Inoki, who returned to the Tsuchikage building, stood on the roof and whispered. At this moment, he suddenly felt a palpitation in his heart, as if everything she did today was wrong. Call. After taking a few deep breaths, Inoki quickly adjusted his condition point. Although his body had adjusted well, Inoki was in a bad mood at this time. He knew that this time was a big gamble, and that the situation that had been falling apart for hundreds of years might be ended in this life. Regardless of whether he succeeds or not, the person who dares to do all this must be a person with great wisdom. In the ruins, just when Inoki left here, a figure in black robes appeared there. The figure in black robes and a tiger-striped mask was none other than Obito. The white Zetsu clone was not surprised by Obito's arrival. Even if we now know the news about the seven-tailed Jinchuriki, we can only temporarily imprison him. The sealing of the tailed beasts must start from the first tail. The white Zetsu clone frowned slightly and asked Obito, now that Konoha village has the idea of unifying the ninja world, we must speed up. Otherwise, if they really unify the ninja world, things will not be so easy to handle. Obito's hoarse voice sounded. Yes, now that the one tails, two tails, and nine tails are all on Konoha's side, maybe we have to change our plans. At this moment, a familiar voice sounded from behind Obito. I saw a figure shrouded by a giant pitcher plant slowly emerging from the ground. It was Zetsu. The one-tailed Jinchuriki of Sunagakure village has signed a psychic contract with Mount Myoki, and at this time, the one-tailed Jinchuriki is hiding in Mount Myoki and may not appear again in a short period of time. Ju spoke out the news he had just received. Obito's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. He knew that he had to move faster. If he were a few steps later, more tailed beasts might be obtained by Konoha. Inform Nagato and the others that they must start executing the plan as soon as possible. If Uzumaki Naraku cannot be eliminated this time, then go to the Cloud Ninja village to capture the eight tails, Obito said coldly. Kindness. Zetsu nodded, then seemed to think of something, and said again, a new Kazekage has taken office in Sunagakure village. Obito didn't care when he heard this. In his opinion, no matter who was the Kazekage, or who was the Kazekage in the 5 great ninja villages, it had nothing to do with him. At this time, he just wanted to capture them as soon as possible. Tailed beast. I have asked Kisame and Scorpion to watch over the 4 tails and 5 tails. After I capture the 7 tails, I will come back and attack them, Obito said, and his body's eye energy burst out, and then his figure became. It was an illusion for a while, until it finally disappeared. Although we need to capture the tailed beast, but now that the heretic golem is gone, even if there is a tailed beast, it will be difficult to deal with it. Black Zetsu thought to himself after Obito left. Although he felt that Obito's current approach was a bit inappropriate, there was currently no better way and he could only do this for the time being. Then his body slowly dived into the ground. At the same time, in a hidden corner near that Tsuchikage building, 2 figures, one tall and one low, appeared here. It was Kisame and Scorpion. Obito himself was a teammate of Jane Scorpion, and Deidara was lurking in the Iwa Ninja village with him. After all, Deidara was a disciple of the 3rd Tsuchikage, and he was very familiar with the Iwa Ninja village, which made it easier for them to do things. But for some reason, Deidara refused to agree. Even though Obito put a dagger on his neck, he still refused to sneak into the Iwa Ninja village. In the end, Obito had no choice but to give up and let Kisame and Scorpio form a temporary team, while he took Deidara and went to Taki Ninja village to find the 7-tailed Jinchuriki, based on the news given to him by the white Zetsu clone just now. Chapter 295. You can stay here today. Because Konohagakure was preparing to launch a war against Sunagakure village, the entire ninja world began to be in turmoil. Kirigakure gathered the ninja troops and rushed to the border. The Iwa ninjas had also begun to gather their troops. The Cloud Ninja village also made a series of actions after receiving the information. Among them, the fourth Reikage asked someone to reply to Inoki, and the two agreed on a time and place for the meeting. Storm is coming, in the Sand Hidden Village. Who is that person? He dares to stand on the Kazakage building. Is he provoking our Sunagakure village? That's right, where are the Anbu personnel? Why don't you deal with this person quickly? Near the Kazakage building. At this time, everyone around was looking up at the figure standing on the roof of the Fengying building. With long silver hair, a black mask, and a white cat-faced mask on his head. Those who are familiar with him may recognize this person as Kakashi at a glance point, but now that he was in Sand Hidden Village, it was normal for everyone to fail to recognize his identity. Swish, swish, swish. At this moment, several figures wearing masks appeared and surrounded Kakashi. They were all Anbu of Sunagakure Village. Although the Anbu personnel surrounded Kakashi, they did not dare to act rashly at this time, because around Kakashi, more than a dozen figures had fallen, and without exception they were all Sunagakure Anbu. This is also the reason why Kakashi can't stay on the roof of the building. This time Kakashi did not hide his figure. The moment he appeared on the roof of the building, he was discovered by the Sunagakure Anbu. It's just that they discovered that they didn't have the strength to expel Kakashi. Because they had learned from the past, these people did not dare to attack Kakashi rashly at this time. Call Elder Chiyo quickly, Kazakage-sama. And the others are here, the Anbu Captain Yamada said in an irritable tone. Captain, we have already conveyed the news to them, but Lord Kazakage is not at home. Elder Chiyo is rushing here quickly. Kakashi stood on the top of the building with a calm face, and only his right eye showed a hint of caution. Although he was very confident in his own strength, it was somewhat rash to challenge a village by himself. Even if the Anbu in front of him can't cause any harm to him, if thousands of ninjas attack him at the same time, it will still be somewhat troublesome. In fact, there are two reasons why Kakashi chose to do this. On the one hand, in order to complete Tsunade's mission, he wanted to intimidate the entire Sunagakure village with his absolute strength and power. His original plan was to appear here with hundreds of team members to intimidate Sunagakure. But because of the appearance of Orochimaru, Kakashi changed his mind. After all, Orochimaru is a powerful shadow level expert. If a battle breaks out with him here, he himself will not be afraid at all, but those team members may be in danger. Many of the 100 team members were the younger generation of major families in the village, and Kakashi did not want them to suffer too many casualties. So he came up with the current method, where he alone would scare Sunagakure, while the other team members would return to the border of the Kingdom of Wind, and assist Konoha's ninja army to capture the border from the rear. On the other hand, Kakashi also wanted to see Orochimaru's current strength. You must know that the last time the two of them fought was when Kushina woke up a few years ago. At this time, Kakashi also learned from Tsunade about Orochimaru's body change, the Kaguya clan's blood succession limited corpse veins and the Hyuga clan's Byakugan. With the limits of the two top blood successors, Kakashi guessed that Orochimaru's strength has greatly increased now. As for the extent to which it has reached, only after the two have fought it will be known. Swish. At this moment, another figure flashed out and came to the top of the building. With a face full of wrinkles and a somewhat stooped body. The person who came was none other than Granny Chiyo. Elder Chiyo, Captain. Shanmeo took a step forward and was about to say something, but was interrupted by Chiyo reaching out. Hatake. Kakashi, what are you doing in my Sunagakure village? Chiyo looked forward with slightly hostile eyes. Chiyo was extremely familiar with Kakashi. After all, he was her enemy, so she recognized Kakashi's identity at a glance. Elder Chiyo, someone saw the S-class rebel Orochimaru from Konoha village running to your Sunagakure village. In order to prevent him from causing harm to Sunagakure village, Lord Hokage specially ordered me to arrest him and bring him back to Konoha village. Leaf. So, Elder Chiyo, has Sunagakure village decided to hand over the traitorous ninja Orochimaru? As he spoke, Kakashi narrowed his exposed left eye slightly and looked at Chiyo with a half smile. Haha, why did the traitorous ninja Orochimaru appear in my Sunagakure village? Your Konoha village must have made a mistake, Chiyo. sneered and said that it was impossible for her to take off this hat. Well, we won't know if Orochimaru is in Sunagakure village until we look for it, don't you think, Elder Chiyo? Kakashi tried to repeat the words Shikaku had given him. For the resourceful Shikaku, Orochimaru's appointment as the 5th Kazekage is a double-edged sword. The disadvantage is that it makes it more difficult for Konoha village to capture Sunagakure village, but the benefit is that Konoha village has found a legitimate leader. Casus Belly pointed can be regarded as a famous teacher, although Tsunade didn't care about this, it was already like this, and it was okay to follow the trend, so Shikaku handed this set of words to Kakashi. And at this time, the news that the rebel ninja Orochimaru had defected to Sunagakure village and served as the 5th Kazekage had spread throughout the Fire Country and quickly spread towards the Wind Country. In just one day at most, the entire Sunagakure village will know that their new Kazekage is the rebellious ninja of Konoha village, Orochimaru. On the rooftop, when Kakashi said that he was going to inspect Sunagakure village, Chiyo stopped talking. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and a sharp light flashed deep in her eyes. If it were before, she might still be deeply afraid of the powerful Kakashi, but now, this fear is not as strong as before. Swish. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared next to Chiyo, and then whispered a few times in her ear. As expected, there is only one person. In fact, before Chiyo came to the top of the building, she sent someone to inspect the surroundings of the Kazekage building. He was worried that Kakashi would have teammates ambushing around, but now she was relieved. The people he sent out inspected several times, but there was no one. Identify any suspicious persons at this time. There was only one Konoha ninja, Kakashi, in the entire Sunagakure village. At this time, Chiyo changed her attitude instantly, and a fierce momentum burst out from her body. She looked at Kakashi with cold eyes and said coldly, "Hatake." Kakashi rashly broke into our village without the permission of Sunagakure village, and even killed more than a dozen Suna ninjas for no reason. You can stay here today. Chapter 296 Kakashi's Cruel Methods. Sand Hidden Village. On the roof of the Kazekage building, crack, crack, a roar of thunder and lightning sounded on the field, and you could see blue thunder and lightning surrounding Kakashi at this time, and a violent momentum emanated from him. Holding a silver sword in his hand, Kakashi looked straight at Chiyo in front of him with sharp eyes. Ha ha. At this time, Chiyo was breathing heavily, and his old face was covered with beads of sweat. At the same time, there were several figures holding sharp weapons in front of her. These were Chiyo's puppets. Chiyo was once known as the #1 puppet master in Sunagakure village. Mastering the secret technique of Shikamatsu 10 people, he could control 10 puppets to attack the enemy at the same time. Even though she is old now, she still has good fighting ability. But even so, she didn't get any benefit from Kakashi. After just 2 minutes of fighting with Kakashi, she paid the price with an Anbu team and 5 puppets. Looking back at Kakashi, he looks the same as before, and his aura is even more violent. Why don't you show up yet, Orochimaru? Kakashi secretly thought in his heart. In fact, with his current strength, if he attacks with all his strength, let alone Chiyo in front of him, even if the 4th generation Kazekage appears again, it is impossible to stop him. The reason why he is still fighting with Chiyo here is just to lure Orochimaru out. Swish, swish, swish. At this moment, a dozen figures appeared and stood beside Chiyo. Perhaps the corpses surrounding Kakashi let them know that the other party was strong in melee combat, so they conservatively chose to attack from a distance. The few people who just appeared raised their hands and began to make seals quickly. Water, escape, water fang bullet, earth, escape, earth dragon bullet, wind, escape, a big breakthrough, wind, escape. In an instant, more than a dozen attacks appeared and blasted in Kakashi's direction. Boom. After a loud noise, the huge impact set off a puff of smoke, and Kakashi's figure was submerged in it. No, get back. At this moment, Chiyo seemed to have thought of something. Her face suddenly changed, and then she hurriedly spoke loudly. But it was obvious that her reminder was a step too late. A blue figure appeared, had behind a person. It was Kakashi. At this time, he was holding a silver short blade and slashed towards the person's neck. Buff. The next moment, a burst of bright red blood spattered, and then the man fell to the ground with a thud. Gangjing. The person next to him roared angrily when he saw this, but before he could make any move, he felt a chill on his neck, and then he fell directly to the ground like the person just now. Next, I saw a blue shadow flashing quickly through the crowd. Kakashi moved quickly like a top assassin. Every time he took a shot, one person would fall. However, Kakashi still held back, and Chiyo, who is still standing there safely, is a good proof. Kakashi still knows very well that Chiyo is now the soul of Tsunagakure village, and even the newly appointed Kazekage cannot compare with her in terms of prestige. If she were killed here, it would only arouse the anger of the Tsunagakure village, and make them hate Konoha even more. In this way, Tsunade's idea of wanting the Tsunagakure village to surrender voluntarily was in vain. Kakashi wouldn't do anything that was counterproductive. Boom. Soon, as the last person fell to the ground, the team of more than a dozen people were all killed. Once again, only Chiyo and Kakashi were left on the field. Looking at the corpses lying on the roof, Chiyo's eyes gradually dimmed. These were the elites of her Tsunagakure village. For the current Tsunagakure village, manpower is already scarce, and Kakashi killed so many people this time that most of the entire Anbu personnel were lost. At this time, the roof of the building was filled with the smell of blood. Dozens of corpses were scattered on the roof of the building. The red blood quickly dyed the area red. Regarding the deaths of these people, Kakashi did not feel any distress in his eyes. For him, who participated in the Third Ninja War when he was young, this kind of scene was nothing. He knew that if Tsunagakure village could not be allowed to voluntarily surrender, more people would undoubtedly die. Although it sounds contradictory, Kakashi wanted to say that the reason why he used such cruel methods today was just to keep more people alive. But it was obvious that Chiyo and the rest of the people in Tsunagakure village could not understand his approach at this time. Elder Chiyo, do you want to think carefully about whether the rebel Orochimaru is in Tsunagakure village? Boom. Just as Kakashi finished speaking, a violent aura suddenly struck him. Kakashi, who noticed the movement, turned around and saw a tall figure approaching him rapidly. This man was extremely fast, and he was in front of him in just an instant. Boom. Instantly, there was an explosion of air, and the man suddenly kicked Kakashi, and invisible airwaves surrounded the man's legs. Kakashi's eyes narrowed slightly, and he actually felt a sense of threat from this kick. Without hesitation, he raised his arms and crossed them in front of his chest. Boom. The next moment, his body fell backwards like a cannonball, and then he fell directly from the roof and fell towards the bottom of the building. Chuan, how did you? At this time, Chiyo, who was on the roof of the building, showed an unexpected expression, and her eyes fell on the figure that suddenly appeared. This is a tall man, and it can be seen from the man's sparse white hair and wrinkled face that he is already quite old. Koatama was a ninja at the same time as Chiyo, but his talent was average, and he disappeared from everyone very early. Chiyo never expected that the other party would appear at this time, and his powerful strength was even more surprising. Chuan, are you really? Suddenly, Chiyo thought of something. Although Koyu's talent was average, he had a great love for taijutsu and even threatened to create a top taijutsu. But no one cared about it at the time. After all, who would care about what the most ordinary Chuanin said? Even Chiyo only did it because the other party asked her for something. Hurry up and ask Kazekage-sama to come over. I can't hold on for long. Koatama didn't pay attention to Chiyo's shock. At this time, Koatama looked cautious, even though he had just successfully hit Kakashi. But he knew that move didn't do him much harm. Chiyo here also calmed down instantly after hearing Koyu's words, but she didn't make any move. As early as when she first came here, she had already sent someone to notify Orochimaru. Chapter 297. This old guy is really strong. Swish, a blue light flashed in front of Chiyo's eyes. It was Kakashi who was shot down. At this time, the blue electric light on his body flashed, and he looked no different from before. Seeing this, Chiyo gave up the last trace of luck in her heart. However, Kakashi did not pay attention to her changes at this time, but focused on the tall old man. With just one glance, Kakashi felt something strange there. are no chakra fluctuations on his body. Kakashi frowned slightly. He sensed an aura very similar to K's on the other person. Junior of Konohagakure, is your village really going to launch a war against my Sunagakure village? At this moment, Chuanayu spoke, his voice loud and clear like that of an energetic young man. Kakashi looked calm when he heard this and did not answer. He didn't know how to answer. You can't tell him that the capture of Sunagakure villages just for the pursuit of peace. In this case, it will be difficult for the other party to believe it. I understand. Chuanayu said nothing after seeing this. The next moment, a strong fighting spirit rose from him, and the air around him fluctuated like a tide. At this time, Kakashi showed a surprised expression on his face. As expected, he is a taijutsu ninja like K. Kakashi secretly thought in his heart, and then his eyes gradually became serious. Because of K, he would not look down on any ninja who specializes in taijutsu. Noisy blocks of electricity surrounded Kakashi. The next moment, his legs tightened, and he exerted force suddenly. His body turned into a blue shadow and appeared in front of Koryu in an instant. The short blade in his hand was covered with lightning, tearing through the air like a thunder shadow and falling towards Chuanayu. But at this moment, Kakashi suddenly felt alarm bells ringing in his heart, as if he had been targeted by some prey. Trying to suppress the abnormal emotions in his heart, Kakashi continued to attack Koadama. Boom. The next moment, there was an explosion of air, and Kakashi's body flew backwards again. But this time Kakashi quickly stabilized his figure. But even so, there was still a hint of shock in his eyes. His eyes fell on Chuanayu, who was maintaining a punching posture in front of him, and he frowned slightly. He was obviously the one who launched the attack just now, but he was hit by the opponent at an extremely fast speed. Is he faster than me? Kakashi thought to himself, his eyes becoming more serious. You must know that now he has always maintained the state of turning on the Chidori style. The violent thunder attribute chakra is stimulating his cells all the time. In this state, his speed has been greatly improved. But even so, it was still not as fast as the other party, and Kakashi couldn't believe it. Speed, isn't it? At this moment, Kakashi seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes fell on the invisible air current surrounding Koryu. There was a hint of speculation in Kakashi's heart. You've already seen something so quickly. This kind of talent is really enviable. Koryu, who noticed Kakashi's gaze, thought to himself the next moment. Boom. Chuanayu's body shot forward like a bullet, and its speed was so fast that it directly produced a sonic boom in the air. It's a competition of speed. Let's fight. Crackling. More intensive thunder and lightning flashed out from Kakashi's body and then completely wrapped his body. The next moment, he held a short blade and attacked forward again. Chiyo on the side looked extremely nervous at this time. In her sight, Kakashi was still much faster than Koadama, but in an instant, the two had collided with each other. The silver short blade in Kakashi's hand was pointed directly at Koadama's chest. Although the invisible airflow was blocked, this time Kakashi burst out with more powerful force and directly dispersed the airflow. Chiyo's expression changed instantly, and without any hesitation, she stretched out her 10 fingers. Chakra surged from her fingertips, and the 5 puppets seemed to be resurrected in an instant, and they were about to move forward to rescue Koryu. But at this moment, Koryu suddenly opened his mouth, and saw a stream of turbine air spurting out from his mouth, and then in an instant, a burst of light yellow energy appeared around him. In an instant, he was lagging behind Kakashi. The speed instantly led to overtaking. Koadama turned around and dodged the attack of the short blade at an extremely fast speed, then quickly moved his leg and kicked Kakashi in the abdomen. In just a moment, Kakashi's figure was like a cannonball again. Then it flew away. This time it didn't stop until it broke several earth walls. This Chiyo, who was about to go to the rescue, was stunned for a moment. She never imagined that her once inconspicuous colleague could actually knock Kakashi away twice in a row. Boom. Koadama's body, surrounded by light yellow energy, flashed and attacked in the direction where Kakashi flew backwards. Only Chuanayu himself knew that he could not last long in this state. Swish. At this moment, a thunder shadow flashed out and collided directly with the fast-moving Chuanayu. Koryu's pupils shrank, and he had already recognized the wreckage as Kakashi. The next moment, a heavy punch hit Koryu's body, causing him to fly backwards. Chihiro's face turned ugly again when he saw this. Although Koryu gave himself a big surprise, it turned out that the more surprising thing was Kakashi. Crack. Crack. At this time, Kakashi was surrounded by thunder and lightning, and the arc that was originally just as thick as a finger became as thick as his wrist. The dense and thick thunder and lightning formed a thunder armor on Kakashi's body, which was the secret thunder armor of the Cloud Ninja Village. Kakashi stood on the ground with a calm expression, and everyone around Tsunagakure quickly stepped back when they saw this. Chuanai's sudden outburst just now really caught him off guard, but fortunately he used the thunder armor, which not only greatly increased his defense power, but also increased his speed by another level. But at this moment, he suddenly raised his head and looked forward, where Koryu's figure slowly emerged, and Kakashi frowned. In the thunder armor state, even Naraku doesn't dare to resist my attack easily. This old guy's body is really strong. Haha, Konoha boy, you are really full of surprises. Koryu's old face was full of excitement at this time. Let me fight to the fullest today. Chuanai's fighting spirit became stronger and stronger, and then the light yellow energy on his body began to become richer, and the aura on his body began to grow crazily with every breath he took. The next moment, his originally tall body swelled up again, and the muscles on his body that had shriveled due to age also became active, until finally, he turned into a sturdy middle-aged man. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298 7-Day Calling Method. In the Sand Hidden Village, Koatama. Chihiro also walked down the roof. After seeing Koatama, who suddenly became younger, she suddenly understood why the other party had become so strong. In Sand Hidden Village, there is a special breathing method called the 7-Day Breathing Method. This breathing method can activate the whole body with a large amount of oxygen, thereby enhancing combat power. Although this breathing method is very powerful, no one in Sand Hidden Village can practice it successfully, because the breathing method is incomplete, and there is no other record, except the name and function introduction. Chihiro never expected that Koryu would actually perfect this breathing method, and practice it successfully. But at this time, she did not show a happy expression, but a sad look on her face. Her eyes fell on Chuanyu in front of her. She knew that after this battle, Chuanyu's life would come to an end point. Although the 7-Day Calling Method is very strong, Chuanyu is already old now, and excessively increasing the activity of love body will only speed up his death point on the field. The face of Koadama, who had returned to his prime, became more and more excited. For him, being able to fight an opponent of Kakashi's level before the deadline came was already satisfying. Boom. Chuanyu exerted force under his feet, and a sudden explosion sounded. His body had disappeared, and the ground cracked where he originally stood. It's really a strange idea to enhance physical activity by adjusting breathing, Kakashi thought to himself. Then he reached out and lifted up the forehead protector covering his left eye. In an instant, the Scarlet 3 Magatama Sharingan emitted a strange red light with the blessing of Sharingan. His dynamic vision has been greatly improved, and Koryu, who had disappeared, appeared in his sight, and was still approaching him quickly. Kakashi held a short silver blade in his hand. Blue light flashed on his body, and then he advanced instead of retreating, rushing straight towards Koadama. The next moment, the two people approached instantly. The silver short blade tore through the air and swung forward. In just an instant, Koadama, who was still in front of Kakashi, disappeared in an instant, and came to his right. So fast. Kakashi was shocked. Even if he turned on his Sharingan now, he could only barely capture the opponent's figure. The next moment, Kakashi suddenly raised his right arm to block, and then a huge force appeared on his arm instantly. In just an instant, his body was ejected, and Koryu caught up with him in a flash. Don't underestimate our Tsunagakure village. Koryu let out a roar, and then a series of attacks fell on Kakashi. He lost his center of gravity, and could only barely protect his vitals, while other parts of his body were violently attacked by Koryu. After more than 10 consecutive attacks, Koryu suddenly opened his mouth and let out a breath of turbid air. Almost at the same time, his attack speed slowed down, and Kakashi immediately seized the opportunity. After dodging the attack with a somersault, he kicked off his feet fiercely and jumped forward, pointing the silver short blade directly at Koayu's chest. However, he dodged it in the end and only injured his arm. The pain in his arm not only did not dissipate Chuanayu's desire to fight, but instead made him even more excited. In just a short moment, he took another breath, and instantly his attack speed began to surge again, launching another high-speed attack on Kakashi. In an instant, Kakashi was once again at a disadvantage, and could only barely parry the opponent's attack point. But after more than a dozen attacks, Koayu paused again. At this moment, Kakashi's eyes flashed, and he appeared behind the opponent in a flash. After kicking it away, Kakashi stepped forward with a short blade in his hand. Dense blue thunder and lightning erupted from the silver short blade, and a blue sword light burst out from the short blade in an instant. Crack. Crack. The sword light is composed of blue thunder and lightning, filled with violent energy inside. Guy. The sword light tore through the air and fell directly towards Chuanyu's body. The vitality in the body is decreasing, and the pauses between breathing transitions are becoming more and more obvious. At this time, Kakashi had already seen Koayu's weakness. The thunder and lightning sword light was struck at the moment when Chuanayu had just breathed out. He concluded that Chuanayu at this time could not block or evade this blow point. Although Kakashi's whole body was attacked by the opponent at this time, because of Reiki, he only felt a little sore in some parts of his body, and he also took the initiative to defend the vital parts apart from looking a little embarrassed by being suppressed. Kakashi did not suffer any substantial damage. By now, Kakashi has also turned from defense to offense. The thunder and lightning sword light was extremely fast and was about to fall on Chuanyu almost instantly. However, at this moment, a puppet suddenly appeared and blocked Chuanyu's body. At the same time, these two puppets attacked Kakashi. Elder Chiyo. Sure enough, it's a bit troublesome to have so many people, Kakashi whispered in his heart, and then turned quickly. While avoiding the puppet's attack, he also slashed at a puppet, and violent thunder attribute chakra burst out from the short blade in an instant. The next moment, the puppet turned into a burst of debris and dissipated. Boom. But at this moment, a sonic boom sounded, and it was Koayu. After readjusting his breathing, he once again launched a fierce offensive against Kakashi. Crack. Crack. Surrounded by blue thunder and lightning, protected by thunder armor, this time Kakashi used the thunder attribute chakra to the extreme, and his speed was even faster visible to the naked eye. Kakashi, whose speed increased, began to face off against Koadama. Compared with Kakashi, who continued to increase his speed, his condition was getting worse at this time. Even if I adjust my breathing speed, it is still slower than before. In this state, Kakashi quickly seized the opportunity when Kakashi stopped breathing and slashed his left arm with a knife. In an instant, violent thunder attribute chakra was transmitted to his body. For a moment, Chuanayu felt as if half of his body had lost consciousness. And this was not over. After the violent thunder attribute invaded Koayu's body, Kakashi kicked his feet on the ground and took a quick step back. As if Chuanayu noticed something, his expression changed instantly. Boom. The next moment, a violent explosion sounded, and the huge impact set off a puff of smoke on the field. After the smoke cleared, a slightly embarrassed figure appeared in everyone's sight. It was Chuanayu. His breath was weak at this time, and he seemed to be unable to stand firmly. Moreover, his left arm was empty, with only red blood slipping from there. Chapter 299. As expected of Tsukumo's son. Haha. At this time, Chuanayu was breathing heavily, and the breath on his body became weaker and weaker. His body, which had returned to his prime, also became older in an instant, with sparse white hair and a face full of grooves. At this moment, he seemed older than before. Looking at Koadama with dead grass in front of him. At this moment, Kakashi also lost the desire to continue taking action. In fact, with his strength, if he uses all means from the beginning, he can defeat the opponent head on in a very short period of time. You must know that in the battle just now, apart from sword skills, He only used some secret skills with thunder attributes, and other ninjutsu were almost useless. The main reason why he chose to fight with the opponent until now was that Kakashi wanted to see Koadama's special breathing technique. In his opinion, this is almost a secret technique that is not weaker than the 8-gate Dunjia. If it weren't for Chuanayu's old age, then the other party would definitely become a truly strong man with this secret technique. Looking at Koadama's body shaking in front of him, Kakashi knew that his life had come to an end. With the other party's already old body, it was considered good to be able to survive until now. Aha. Just before Koadama collapsed completely, two figures dressed as Zenbu appeared and took him away. Kakashi did not stop him. At this time, he turned his head and looked to the side, where he felt an extremely cold breath. Kakashi has long been aware of that aura, which is why he always had some strength left in the battle with Koadama. Kakashi, that guy is coming. At this moment the voice of the two-tailed Nikomata sounded in Kakashi's mind, and at the same time, a powerful chakra was quietly delivered to Kakashi. The chakra consumed in the previous battle was replenished at this moment. Yeah, I know. Kakashi nodded. Even without Nikomata's reminder, he had already guessed the identity of the person with the cold aura. At the same time, Chiyo also turned his attention there. Master Kazekage, you are finally here. A bitter smile appeared on the corner of Chiyo's mouth. Not far away, Ibizo came to the dying Koryu. Then, after placing his ear to his mouth and nodding one after another, a touch of sadness finally appeared on his face. At the same time, Chuanayu's rapid breathing stopped. Ibizo was more familiar with Koadama than Chiyo, and he was the one who notified him of his arrival this time. It's just that Ibizo didn't expect that his actions would directly cause Koryu to lose his life. Ugh. Finally, as I covered everything. Since you're already here, let's come out and see you on the field. Kakashi murmured softly, then stretched out his hand. Call out. In an instant, a short silver blade tore through the air and rushed forward, where there was an earth wall. Boom. The short blade directly penetrated the earth wall with a powerful impact, but the next moment clang, a sound of metal collision sounded on the field, and then the silver short blade flew to one side. ZHI. But at this moment, a blue figure has arrived in front of the earthen wall. It is Kakashi. It can be seen that he is holding a silver long knife at this time, which is made of the material of the decapitation sword. Long knife. The sword was covered with thunder and lightning, and an extremely violent aura radiated from Kakashi's body. Thunder slash. At this moment, Kakashi's human and sword merged into one, and his figure followed him like a shadow. He came to the earth wall at an extremely fast speed, and the next moment, he swung his sword forward fiercely. Crack. Crack. Thunder and lightning exploded, and a lightning bolt burst out from the long sword in an instant. Stab it. The sword light tore through the air and instantly landed on the earth wall in front. The moment the two sides came into contact, the earth wall immediately shattered. After defeating the earth wall, the sword light continued to rush forward unabated. As the earth wall collapsed, a white-haired figure appeared in Kakashi's sight. The man with long white hair and two red dots between his eyebrows is Orochimaru. Facing the lightning sword light that was about to fall on him, Orochimaru didn't have any panic in his eyes. You could see that he was holding a white bone blade in his right hand at this time. He just used the bone blade to knock the short blade away. The next moment, blue veins popped up around the big snake's eyes. With his white eyes open, he just dodged and escaped the attack of the thunder and lightning sword. Then his body flashed very quickly, and when he reappeared, he was already standing next to Chiyo. Master Kazekage, you are here. Chiyo turned towards Orochimaru and bowed slightly. Well, let everyone disperse and leave Kakashi to me, Orochimaru said slowly. Chiyo nodded at this, and then she ordered everyone to move back. Perhaps because she was worried about accidentally hurting herself during the battle between the two, she also distanced herself from the two. Until the end, only Kakashi and Orochimaru were left on the field, looking at each other from a distance. Kakashi, you are worthy of being Tsukumo's son. He has grown to this point. Looking at Kakashi in front of him, Orochimaru's eyes flashed with memories, as if he was missing his friend. Just the next moment, boom. The ground shook violently, and a black bone python quickly emerged from the ground and rushed towards Kakashi. The bone python is nearly 10 meters long and looks very powerful. It's indeed you, Orochimaru. The moment the bone python appeared, Kakashi's only exposed right eye flashed with a brilliant light, and then blue light surged from his body. Kakashi, holding a long knife, rushed straight towards the bone python. After Koadama's battle ended, Kakashi pulled off his forehead protector and resealed his left eye. Now he is a Chitailed Jinchuriki. Although he does not lack chakra, using Sharingan for a long time will consume his mental power. Compared with chakra, there is no way to quickly restore mental power. So under normal circumstances, Kakashi would still choose to seal his left eye. Just when Kakashi was fighting Orochimaru, a familiar figure appeared at the border of the Kingdom of Wind. With unruly long hair, a tall figure, and red paint on his face, he was none other than Jiraiya. With his strength, the border guards of Sand Hidden Village were nothing in his eyes. He only used some small means to successfully sneak into the Kingdom of Wind. Looking at the yellow sand flying in the sky, Jiraiya's eyes were a little complicated. For him, this time it was not as simple as launching a war against Tsunagakure Village. Orochimaru, after decades of friendship, Jiraiya's feelings for him have always been complicated, and he doesn't know whether he can make a real decision this time. With a complex expression on his face, he quickly hurried towards the direction of Tsunagakure Village. Chapter 300 The battle between Kakashi and Orochimaru. In the Sand Hidden Village, boom, after two figures, one blue and one white, collided with each other, they quickly distanced themselves. The white bones in the bone python just now are the corpse bone veins that belong exclusively to the Kaguya clan. Kakashi looked up at Orochimaru, who was holding a white bone blade in each hand in front of him, and thought to himself. The last time he returned to the village, Tsunade informed him of the information about the Kaguya clan in Kirigakure village, which also included an introduction to the corpse veins, but it was not particularly detailed. Kakashi only knows that this is a kind of blood inheritance limit that can use body bones as weapons. Although the two of them had just exchanged a few simple moves, Kakashi had already realized the extraordinary power of the corpse veins at this time. Looking down at the silver knife in his hand, he could see that there were several tooth-like gaps on the sharp blade. These were caused by the collision with Orochimaru's bone knife just now. You must know that this long knife is made of the same material as a beheading sword, and its hardness is several grades higher than ordinary weapons. The fact that the bone blade can cause damage to a weapon of this level is enough to prove that the bone blade is unusually hard. Kakashi reached out and lifted up the forehead protector covering his left eye, and the scarlet Sharingan appeared, flashing with a coquettish red light. Sharingan, it's a pity Kakashi, without Uchiha blood, you will only be hindered by this eye. Orochimaru's pale pupils showed a hint of disdain. In the past, he might have been somewhat interested in Kakashi's Sharingan, but now that he has the corpse vein and the Byakugan double blood succession limit, he no longer looks down on the simple Sharingan. At this time, he had opened his Byakugan, and he could clearly see in his sight that Kakashi's left eye was constantly absorbing the chakra from him. But at this moment, Orochimaru also made a new discovery. Gossip. Seal. Could it be? The corners of Orochimaru's lips raised slightly. Use the tailed beast to be sealed within your body to make up for the lack of chakra. Nephew, this looks a bit like your handiwork. In that case, Kakashi, let me show you Kaguya's dance. Orochimaru's eyes were cold. The next moment, a violent aura was released from his body. With himself as the center, the surrounding air fluctuated like a tide, but only for a moment. The next moment Orochimaru returned to normal, as if nothing had happened just now. However, Kakashi looked serious at this time. He felt that he was not facing a person, but an extremely ferocious python. Crack, crack. Dark blue arcs of electricity flashed out again, surrounding him. Kakashi did not dare to be careless, and use the thunder armor again. Suddenly Kakashi's pupils shrank slightly. I saw that Orochimaru in front had disappeared, and only a white shadow flashed quickly, attacking in the direction of Kakashi. Willow. Dance. Elbows. Knees. Back. palms. Sharp bone spurs protruded from various parts of Orochimaru's body pointing Kakashi's sight. Orochimaru walked softly and attacked him in a very special posture. Noisy, not daring to be careless. The blue electric light instantly attached to the silver sword, and then Kakashi quickly swung the sword. Clang, clang, clang. In an instant, there were several crisp metal collision sounds on the field. It can be seen that at this moment Orochimaru launched a continuous attack on Kakashi with an extremely smooth movement. At this time, Kakashi was also using all his strength to activate the thunder attribute chakra in his body, constantly stimulating the cells in his body so as to gain faster speed. Kakashi quickly swung the sword with both hands, and the long sword was driven like an arm in his hand. Although Orochimaru's attack was very fierce, he was still completely blocked by his use of the long sword. Not far away, Chiyo, who wanted to come over to watch the battle, only saw two figures, one white and one blue, colliding together. After a slight hesitation, Chiyo once again chose to distance herself from the two men. Once a battle of this level was involved, it would be difficult for even her to escape. Stab it. Kakashi quickly swung his sword, and the long sword wrapped in a blue arc instantly resembled a thunder blade, tearing through the air and slashing forward. A sharp light flashed from Orochimaru's eyes, and then he stretched out his right arm forward, and the bone blade protruding from the palm of his hand was like a white sword light, rushing forward to meet the thunder blade. Boom. The two collided instantly, and the huge impact directly set off a burst of smoke. Click. Click. At this moment, there was a sound of bone cracking, and multiple cracks appeared on the bone blade extending from Orochimaru's palm, visible to the naked eye. Although the white bone blade is very hard, the silver sword at this time is blessed with thunder energy, and its destructive ability is extremely powerful. But at this moment, Kakashi seemed to notice something, and his scarlet left eye suddenly shrank. Latent shadow snake hands. A cold and hoarse voice came from Orochimaru's mouth, and then his left arm was seen swinging rapidly, and in an instant, more than a dozen long snakes were thrown out from the cuffs. Hiss, hiss. The long snake opened its mouth, revealing the sharp teeth inside, swinging its body in the air, and rushing towards Kakashi's front door. There was not much distance between the two, and before Kakashi even noticed, the long snake was about to fall on him. Crack. Crack. But even so, Kakashi still reacted quickly. The thunder attribute chakra in his body circulated rapidly, and the blue thunder and lightning coiled around him burst out instantly, colliding with those long snakes in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the moment the long snake came into contact with the lightning, it turned into smoke and dissipated. But at this moment, Kakashi's heart suddenly shrank, and without any hesitation, arcs of electricity surged rapidly around his body, and the next moment his figure disappeared. You can see an extended arm, where he originally stood, and a sharp bone blade in the palm of the arm. Use thunder attribute chakra to stimulate body cells, so that the body has the ability to move quickly and defend. Orochimaru murmured, "You have developed the ninjutsu of Young Ninja Village to this extent. It's really good." As he spoke, Orochimaru retracted his extended right arm. Swish. At this moment, as if he sensed something, his pale pupils trembled slightly, and then his body became curved like a spineless snake. The neck also stretched a lot quickly. At this time, a sound broke through the air and a long knife filled with electric arcs appeared at the same time, appearing behind Orochimaru. The long knife passed through Orochimaru's waist. If his body had not softened just now, the knife would have penetrated directly through his abdomen. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.